Sword of Coming Chapter 1144. With a smile on his face, Qin Pingan flicked his sword with his fingers. The tip of the sword trembled slightly, making a clanging sound. The sword's aperture spread out in circles, illuminating his whole face with energy and great freedom. The bird in the cage bumps into the wall with a slight flutter of wings. The frog in the well looks at the sky like a boundary painting. We, who hate each other and have a hard time with each other, can finally say a few big words to the world and in our hearts talk. When Xianxia heard this, instead of making any sarcasm, he felt somewhat enlightened. This finally makes sense. Climbing mountains to seek immortality, what are you afraid of? People who practice Taoism are afraid of the eventuality, and become 10,000. After all, Xianxia is not in the 15th realm, and it is difficult to escape from this path. There are still ups and downs of calamities which are inevitable. Xianxia glanced at Qin Pingan and said, "The real Taoist age is a bit too young. If you win, you will inevitably be suspected of being defeated by force. If you lose, it will be even more disastrous. On the other hand, if this young sword cultivator loses, it will be an honor even if he loses. But if he wins, the future trend of the world will be even more unimaginable. Just say, how will Zhou Zi, the fortune teller, deal with himself then?" Xianxia curled his lips and used a little magical power to crush all these emotions and thoughts in the center of his heart and turn them away. The battle to ascend to the sky is a calamity with swords and soldiers. The Tao went astray. He wanted to take the initiative and occupied the ruins of the ancient heaven. He weakened the world and only respected the military. A common killing was a calamity. After being imprisoned for 10,000 years, another calamity occurred. It seemed that he had escaped from the calamity, but it was the time when the great calamity was approaching. When Jiangxi's Taoist heart was revived and he wanted to organize his military affairs again, the Taoism prevailed and followed him like a shadow. Jiangxi's fate as the founder of the military strategist was naturally the great opportunity that others coveted. Of course, not everyone is qualified to participate in this thrilling gamble. Ordinary monks, as long as they are not in the 14th realm, no matter if you are in the Ascension realm, as long as your life is not hard enough, I am afraid that if you get even a little closer, you will be catastrophically destroyed. Tao Yun was in trouble and turned into a burst of dust and ashes. But even a monk in the 14th realm dares to intervene easily? Definitely keep a respectful distance and watch from the sidelines. For example, Fu Lu Yuxuan, who is in harmony with the Tao and the time, and those who are in the right place. Who is willing to get involved in this situation? If he is not careful, his Tao will be stuck in the mud, unable to extricate himself, and he will fall into a situation that will never be recovered. Jiangxia felt a little aggrieved and couldn't help but laugh and curse, "Chui Chan, that bastard." He had previously thanked Xiuhu and expressed his gratitude. Don't you want to help count the money if you don't want to be cheated? Apart from complaining a few words, Jiangxia really didn't want to express his feelings. Wouldn't it be more aggrieved to compete with a dead man and arm wrestle? Jiangxia had many ideas. When he returned to the world this time, he wanted to conspire to usurp the throne and replace himself. Qin Pingan, a former hidden official, was also one of them. However, after derivation and calculation, the possibility of Qin Pingan was extremely low. The biggest reason is not that Qin Pingan is too young and his level is not high enough for the time being, but that Qin Pingan does not have such big ambitions. In addition, Qin Pingan's biggest imaginary enemies are Bai Yujing and Yu Dou. For both parties, it is a personal grudge. Unexpectedly, Qin Pingan changed his mind temporarily, withdrew the long sword in his hand and asked him to withdraw from the battlefield. With a flash of sword light, the long sword appeared near the leaning pillar in the northwest that connects the sky and the earth. Qin Pingan moved slowly and rolled up the sword. He lifted up his sleeves, shook his wrists and said with a smile, "Then as you wish, practice your hands first so that the younger generation can fully experience the tremendous power of the 11th realm martial artist." Before Qin Pingan could finish what he said, Jiangxia was already close and struck Qin Pingan in the heart with a punch. Qin Pingan's robe and hair on his temples flew into the air, and a clear and melodious sound of jade chimes sounded between heaven and earth. That was Qin Pingan's heart. The bones in Pingan's body trembled, and his body flew more than 1,000 feet upside down like a kite with broken strings. Golden blood oozed from the 7 orifices on his face and floated to the ground. Jiangxia succeeded with one blow, and showed no concern for the strange golden blood. The next moment Jiangxia caught up with Qin Pingan, folded his hands on top of each other, and with his fingers like hooks, he stabbed straight into Qin Pingan's chest and suddenly thrust out. Damn it, Qin Pingan's body was torn apart on the spot. Jiangxia squinted his eyes and stood still, wiping away the golden blood that was splashed on his face. His face and palms made a squeaking sound, and wisps of green smoke rose up into the sky. Xianxia was unaware of the burning sensation and looked around. The golden blood that had previously scattered on the ground was not stained with dust. Instead, it had its own vision and each of its avenues was manifested. When it landed, it turned into a series of mountains lined with beautiful buildings and jade buildings. They were as small as earth mounds and each one was opened with hundreds of thousands of mountains. The rivers of water palaces and palaces are as small as ropes. What is even more mysterious is that in the majestic Deyue mountain, there are indeed blue cranes singing, true kings preaching and fairies scattering flowers. In the winding rivers here there are vast misty waves. The small boat on the rapids and shoals was like an arrow. Xianxia sneered, still pretending to be a ghost, really thinking that he was God. Xianxia slightly dispersed his consciousness, combined with deduction and mental calculation, followed the trend of the water veins of the long river of time and the direction of the circulation of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, like a patrolling the territory, all over the site without missing a thing. The art of war that can go down in history is one of the most famous experts in geography. Which one is not the top expert? Xianxia twitched the corner of his mouth and found you, kid. Xianxia did not shrink down to the mountains and rivers. Instead, he drew his empty bow like a full moon. The holding the bow string suddenly released and an arrow was thick. It's like the mouth of a well, but it's not a straight line, but like a big wild dragon and snake swimming across the ground. In a certain place, it was as if thousands of mirrors were smashed by arrows one after another, and countless colored glazes burst into pieces, creating a brilliant and dazzling light. Chen Pingan first set up the formation with his powerful fists. It was a whimsical idea. Instead, he used the iron cavalry chisel formation in the boxing book to block the power of the incoming arrow. Then he tried to use a normal iron cavalry punch. He tried to carry the arrow in the formation, but it was in vain. Not only was his fist smashed by the arrow, but his entire arm was also shattered. Where he stood, Chen Pingan had lost an arm, and the ground was covered with golden blood. This time a large area of golden flowers and trees appeared on the ground, varying in height and swaying, like a fairy garden. The fists of the 11th realm are indeed unstoppable. Chen Pingan remained motionless and expressionless. Millions of golden threads spread out from the broken arm on his shoulder, and returned to its original shape in the blink of an eye. As expected, the road to martial arts and becoming is the most straightforward. In ancient times, it was the clear stream of the true path, while refining qi and becoming an immortal was the turbid stream. To put it simply, the fists and kicks of the 11th realm were unstoppable, but on today's battlefield, Xianxia didn't seem to be able to use them against his half-one self. After receiving the solid verification, Chen Pingan felt a little relieved, so he reciprocated the favor and said, I also feel a little embarrassed for my senior. Xianxia didn't take it seriously and asked, I heard that you have a special boxing technique called Shinran drumming style. You learned it from Cui Cheng of Aquarius Continent. Isn't it tacky? Chen Pingan nodded and said, It's not tacky. Xianxia smiled and asked, Grandmaster Chen, you don't think that the 11th realm is really worth it, right? Chen Pingan asked doubtfully, Otherwise? Xianxia said calmly, There is no doubt that boxing is a good boxing. But if Cui Cheng is here, I can teach him what the real god's drumming style is. It is said that Chen Pingan, the second shopkeeper at the Great Sword Qi Wall who was not doing his job as a slave, fiddled with the seals of Bai Jiangxian and Jiangxian. For thousands of years, Xianxia has lived in seclusion in the mountains, overlooking the world. Several martial arts schools in the world are prosperous. If a book of 100 fists is compiled, martial artist Cui Cheng has 2 or 3 fists and can enter it. Chen Pingan raised his eyebrows. He wanted this ancestor of the military strategist to learn the simple language of his hometown town, but when he said it, he changed his words and said, Well see. Xianxia clicked his tongue and said, It's such an afterthought. No wonder he lost to Chao Ci 4 times in a row. It's not unfair at all. Although Xianxia didn't show any signs of taking action, Chen Pingan opened his fists as if facing a formidable enemy, and punched the sky with a cloud that flooded the area. It turned out that Xianxi's first punch had already used the god-beating drum style. The majestic fist was like a thick sea of clouds. The immortal in the sky stretched out his palm and pressed down. In an instant, it sank low and fell, trying to connect with the ground and merge into one. After a while, except for where Chen Pingan was standing, the ground for dozens of miles had sunk 7 to 8 feet. Those shocking cracks and ravines were all the palm joints and hand lines. Chen Pingan raised his hand to wipe his face, shook his head and poured out the blood in his ears. The power of just one punch was like an overwhelming catastrophe. Qin Pingan took a deep breath. It wasn't that he couldn't bear the pain. To be honest, this injury was nothing. But that kind of suffocating feeling like seeing the sky with fists is really hard to bear. Xianxia sneered and said, "If you are a layman watching the excitement of the 14th level and the ascending level Qi practitioner, and underestimate the 11th level of martial arts, that's it. You are a martial artist who has reached the level of perfection and is approaching the state of perfection. You are a person who has entered the palace. Dare to take it lightly?" Aunt Feng, who is now hiding in the capital of Dali, didn't tell you how heavy Jiangxi's punches were on the way to heaven? And how did the man who worked as a coachman for Nanhao receive 2 punches back then? That made the first crack appear on his golden body? As he spoke, Jiangxi was still standing in the distance, not even breathing, so he punched another dozen punches at once, leaving Qin Pingan with no way to hide. He could only receive the punches and rely on his physical strength to carry it down. Jiangxi shook his head. You and Cui Cheng, after all, are just at their limit, unable to support the true meaning of this type of boxing, and unable to truly carry it forward. You think him stealing a punch? With a look of disdain on his face, Jiangxi asked and answered himself, "It's just that 10,000 years later, there was a warrior named Cui who happened to be in the same place as me." After more than 30 punches, Qin Pingan's almost pure golden body collapsed on the spot. As soon as he gathered his figure in the distance, more than 20 punches arrived. Groups of golden light scattered and gathered together. On the ground, there were large craters that suddenly collapsed and a series of muffled thunder and vibrations. If you change the battlefield and change the opponent, wouldn't it be like picking up grass to kill ascension? Jiangxi seemed to feel a little bored, a little unable to cheer up, and yawned. Regardless of the situation on the battlefield, Jiangxi turned to look at the long sword and asked the biggest question in his heart. What did the co-leader of the heavenly court think? Country school. After having had enough wine and food, Jiang Shangzhen lay on the wicker chair, gently shook the cattail leaf fan like the old cook, and said with a soft smile, "Ningji, your background is actually unusual." Ningji was a little surprised. She didn't know why Mr. Jiang took the initiative to bring up this topic, but hesitated to speak. After spending these days together, Ningji really admired Mr. Jiang's ability to do as the locals do in the countryside. He could spend hours chatting among the farmers and village women, crossing his legs and making jokes, only talking about a few things in the village. Even local dogs are willing to follow Mr. Jiang. Ningji had been to Luapa Mountain and heard some things. When he came back here, he almost forgot Mr. Jiang's titles and some of his reputation on the mountain. Jiang Shangzhen continued to ask, "Is it understandable if I say this?" Ningji nodded. Jiang Shangzhen deliberately wanted to get to the bottom of the problem. "Then I'm curious, how do you understand it? Let's see if there is any deviation between what you think and what I guessed." Ningji hesitated for a moment, then chose to say frankly, "If it was just my husband who accepted me as a student, I might not think much about it. At most, after thinking about it, I would feel that it was probably a kind-hearted gentleman who felt compassion for me. I was lucky enough to meet but there was an extra headmaster by Yujinglu, and he said that I could regard him as a little master. Then unless I am a fool, I should know that things are not that simple." Jiang Shangzhen hummed, "So in order to accept a student like you, our Master Qin has taken on a lot of responsibility and affected a lot of cause and effect. As a result, it is inevitable that there will be more accidents." Ningji was silent. "Be patient, don't be anxious. I am not telling you this truth to tell you to study hard and practice diligently so as not to waste your resources and qualifications. It is also not to burden you. It seems that every tomorrow of Ningji will be from now on. I have to live a very tired life to be worthy of Qin Pingan's choice yesterday. That's not the case. To be honest, if I have this intention and Qin Pingan finds out one day with his temper, he will insist on killing me. If you beat the out of it, Mr. Jiang will no longer be able to be the chief worshipper." Perhaps Jiang Shangzhen's words were humorous, and Ningji grinned, feeling a little more relaxed. Jiang Shangzhen continued, "I just hope that a young man who has had a rough life but finally waited for the good times, if he encounters something that feels aggrieved and can't be explained, he can stop feeling so aggrieved and tell himself a few words in his heart. It's okay. Be more patient, read more and think about it again. Even if you don't understand, there will always be 1 or 2 people who can help you solve the problem in the future. At worst, you can go complain to your husband." Ningji nodded and said, "Remember it." Jiang Shangzhen sat up, handed the cattail leaf fan to Ningji and said, "I have to go far away." Ningji asked softly, "Mr. Jiang, what is this?" Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said, Do something big that doesn't need to be spread. Ningji was a little worried about Mr. Jiang and hesitated to speak again. Jiang Xianxia said, "Your husband said something strange to me at that time. He said that it was because of this that he had to protect you even more. I can barely understand this idea, but I definitely can't do this. Just because I think Jiang Shang is really the only one in the world. I don't look like anyone and no one looks like me. But Qin Pingan feels that he looks like many old people and many young people will look like him." Standing next to the wicker chair and Ningji, Jiang Xianxia laughed at himself. "I can't even understand this. Standing in the shaky world, hiding in a stable heart. Maybe each of us has a closed heart house, big or small. The road outside the door, which may be wide or narrow and leads to the distance, is probably called a dream." Before Jiang Xianxia left, he asked, "Ningji, tell me, your husband and I are two different people. How come we got together? We have a good relationship?" Ningji shook his head. "Mr. Jiang, let me think about it. Can you explain the answer after you return to the school to teach?" Jiang Xianxia laughed and said, "What are you thinking about? Don't you already have the answer? You guessed it right, it's just one word: money." Yuan Ying deliberately fell at the end of the team, separated from the team for a long distance, and walked alone on the road in a foreign land. The unknown wildflowers were blooming gorgeously and the fragrance was fragrant. Yuan Ying lifted up her embroidered shoes and gently brushed through a field of delicate yellow flowers nearby. She turned around to look at the short flowers from time to time, as if waiting for someone to catch up. She was born in the blessed land of Xiyu in the Qingming world. The two preachers were both Haoran monks. The first master, Lu Qi, and the second master, Chao Zhu, had both the reputation of preaching and the kindness of raising her up. Sure enough, Lu Qi appeared soon. The white-clothed Qing looked like an immortal, with a gentle expression. He encouraged him with a few words of encouragement to this disciple whom he regarded as his own. In fact, there was not much to talk about in the monastic affairs. After all, Yuan Ying was so kind. Immortal material, cultivation is like the breath of an ordinary master. Lu Qi took the initiative to chat about the elusive night ship, giving Yuan Ying the opportunity to board the ship for a visit, such as visiting Entry City and Lingxi City over there. Yuan Ying joked, "Master, it would be more lively if you join our sect with the second master." Lu Qi looked up at the team in front of her, shook her head and said nothing. In addition to Zhang Fenghai, who is already at the 14th level of cultivation steadily, there is also Wu Fu Fengru, who is one of the 10 people in Qingming world. There is still Lu Bixia, one of the 10 candidates who serves as the master in charge. The female founder of Yongzhou Xianzhang sect, her master is Xuanhuan, her Taoist name is Photography Cloud. She is responsible for taking care of the sect's money bag. She is not a high-level person but has a lot of authority. For such a sect, no matter how small the number of people is, no one dares to underestimate it. At the front of the team, the deputy sect master stood beside the sect leader. "Sir Sect Master, as long as we get rid of that white-skinned man in Luzhou, Beiju, we will be the sect with the smallest number of people. Are you not moved?" Seeing that the sect master was unmoved, Lu Tai continued to persuade, "I heard that he has just entered the Ascension realm a few days ago. It doesn't matter that Bai Shang is a sword cultivator. After all, the realm is unstable. Just a big group of us, noisily and swarming up. By Daijian, isn't it possible for the immortal to get into chaos? When his Taoist mind is in chaos, Brother Xinxin slams down his fist with his big fist. Lu Zhonglu follows up with another Taoist spell, and I can take advantage of the chaotic black tiger to dig out its heart and kill it with one blow." Although they had only known each other for a short time, Anonymous still admired Lu Tai's shamelessness and lack of tone in his words. At the same time, Fengai's arrogance becomes even more overwhelming. How can he really bear it when someone makes such noise in his ears every day? Not feeling upset? Zhang Fenghai smiled and said, "You just need to turn a deaf ear to it. Over time you will get used to it. If you don't talk to him, see if he can chatter a few thousand words at a time. Just treat it like listening to someone's story for free." Anonymous smiled and nodded. "It's indeed a good idea." Master Xingyuan rolled his eyes and said, "Deputy Sect Leader Lu, stop talking nonsense and talk more seriously. Even when she is away from home and traveling across the world, she still wears the same attire as by Yujing Yanxia Cave. She is a dark-faced and slender woman. She has a wooden hairpin in her hair, a sarong skirt and cotton shoes, and she is like a woman who works in the countryside all year round. Like a young woman, walking among this majestic team of immortals, the master's palace looked very eye-catching." Lu Tai complained, "Do you understand the rules of officialdom if you don't use a deputy when addressing an official position?" The master was helpless and said to Zhang Fenghai in his heart, Sect master, why don't you make a sect rule and simply not allow Lu Tai to speak? Zhang Fenghai also turned a deaf ear. Lu Tai coughed a few times, moistened his throat and recounted some old stories. In ancient times, gods and earth, the majesty of heaven was unfathomable, and a large number of witches appeared in the world. They are responsible for entertaining the gods and offering praises to the worshippers. They are also called those who receive the gods. They are like interpreting the changes in the world and explaining the joys, sorrows and joys of God for us. However, because our human race is too weak in body, we are always dominated by monsters with strong bodies. The tribes hunted and killed them wantonly and used them as food. In the early days, the human race had almost no power to fight back, resulting in a lack of incense. The gods of the old heaven felt that this was not possible. One of the gods of the thunder tribe, with the might of heaven, took the lead in coming to the world to kill. The corpses of those stubborn monsters are piling up in mountains, but this will only cure the symptoms but not the root cause. How to do it? Either simply kill all the monsters that eat people everywhere or let the humans who are worse than ants be a little bigger. The Confucian scriptures of later generations have disputes between ancient and modern times, and there are also people. For example, we have they all belong to the category of modern people. The old guys like the ancestors of the military strategists are well-deserved ancients. The gods began to give us a strong skin and a little more soul. The 1 soul and 2 souls of the ancients has become the 3 souls and 6 souls of today's people. Lu Bixia asked, isn't it 3 souls and 7 souls? Lu Tai smiled and said, the last soul was found by the Taoist priests in ancient times after untold hardships. It was not a gift from the gods. Master Xuanhuan suddenly said, no wonder later generations come to the temple to offer incense, sometimes 3, 6, or 9 times. Lu Tai glared and said, I didn't say that. Couldn't it be the calligraphy and painting seal, or 1 or 3 used to supplement yang and odd numbers? Lu Tai hurriedly put his hands together, muttered some words and then said seriously, the literati worked hard, the masters taught themselves and wrote books and biographies. They are all described as the fragrance of the heart. When the word hunting was mentioned earlier, Lu Tai deliberately glanced sideways at Anonymous. Lu Tai turned his head, looked at Li Huai and asked with a smile, if a long river of time is an incense burner, Li Huai, guess what the new incense is? Li Huai shook his head. He has never been good at guessing puzzles and solving problems. Your 7 souls are the incense burner, and your 3 souls are the incense. After hearing such an incredible answer, Li Huai was shocked and inevitably wondered, what does you mean? Lu Tai smiled and said, the Taoist ancestor was the first to propose the way of heaven and the way of man. There is a word of consecration. In this way, the gods in the ancient heaven are no longer the only orthodox way of heaven. The way of heaven seems to be there is the embryonic form of the distinction between the old and the new. The paths of spiritual cultivation of Qigong masters, Taoist priests, scholars, and hundreds of schools of thought have the basis of the great Tao. There is a road. It's still a legitimate path. After that, the young master, our ceremonial sage, connected the heaven and the earth and cast the 9 cauldrons on the top of the mountain. Before that, how to breathe, eat, sleep, how to walk, why do we think, where do our thoughts come from, where do we go? And so on. The simplest questions have become the most difficult questions. Over time, it is the practice of practicing Qi, if you want to understand it, is to practice Taoism. During this period, of course, there was another spell falling like rain, which was like sending charcoal in the snow. A group of ancient Taoist priests who practiced human form, even the golden body state, the bottleneck was also broken. From then on, he became an immortal, covered the earth, traveled far away, resisted the breeze, rode on the clouds, his body was taller than the birds, went to the bright moon to enjoy the scenery, to the sun palace to hear the truth. With the mountain, the peak state, the 3rd level of the end, the energy is strong, the true state is restored, the spirit is reached. Hearing this, Li Huai couldn't help but asked in a low voice, does heaven not care? Lu Tai felt worried. Guan, how could you not ignore it? The ants are a little bigger, but they are still ants. The Taoist priests and warriors gather together to keep warm, but they are still an ant nest in the earth. The gods came and killed the human world with blood flowing into rivers, and killed all the enlightened living beings to tremble. Don't dare to cross the thunder pool even half a step. Do you know how vast the territory of the human world was at that time? So much so that when gods came to the human world, they needed 2 ascension platforms as a path? If we talk about martial arts and Taoism, they come from the same origin but have different currents. After all, every stick of incense smoke curling up in the human world is a divine way to the sky. At this moment, Lu Tai's face turned pale as if he was struck by lightning, and he urgently warned, "No. There is an ambush." Anonymous couldn't help but feel a little nervous. After all, those who dare to come here to cause trouble are either fools looking for death, or first-rate strong players. Yuan Ying was startled in the distance. Lu Qi said with a smile, "Really like this kind of person? Isn't it too unreliable?" Yuan Ying was relieved to see her master look so casual and said from her heart, "He is too pessimistic. When I see it, I can't help but feel sorry for him." Lu Qi nodded. "I think I recognize Lu Tai." On the side of the road ahead, a tall, thin old man with a pale appearance appeared out of thin air, a middle-aged man with an unremarkable appearance, just like the rich man and the porter. "Yuan Ying has two masters, so does Lu Tai." Lu Tai was not surprised at all. The appearance of the two preachers was a matter of course sooner or later. In the mountains, there are only a handful of people who are instantly recognizable as soon as they mention their last names. Zhou count one. Jianghu never changed his breath of pure qi. From beginning to end, Qin Pingan had no power to fight back. Countless golden blood was scattered on the ground, making an ancient battlefield site that had been reduced to ruins full of vitality. First there were mountains and rivers, then city passes, and then there were all kinds of markets, like a lifelike picture of the world. Just wait for all kinds of characters to settle in it, and then the country will have its owner and truly come to life. The only flaw, the slight flaw in the white jade, is that more than 70 crisscrossing ropes have been stretched out between the sky and the earth. They are all long-lasting fists like iron wires. Cut off this piece of world that is as soft as tofu. Jianghu just frowned slightly. He already thought highly of this person, but it seemed that he was more difficult to deal with than expected. The quick victory envisioned earlier is hard to succeed? He looked at the long sword out of the corner of his eye. Regardless of whether the old sword bar hanging on the stone arch bridge in Liju Cave is the sword spirit of the sword holder, or the real body of the sword holder, one of the 5 highest, it is actually not that important. Everything is difficult at the beginning, but as long as you form a contract with it, this is a road to heaven that is destined to not be abandoned halfway. As a native kiln worker's apprentice, Qin Pingan had this opportunity back then. On the road of spiritual practice thereafter, the real benefits this sword gave to the owner of the contract were too little and too little. When Jianghu founded a military strategist, one of his main principles was that the right time, place, people, and everything should be directed to his own advantage. Failure to make the best use of a sword spirit is simply a waste of resources. A poor family that is too poor to take the blame has a study room worth tens of thousands of dollars, which is used as a decoration year after year. What to do? Do you go hungry every day and feast your eyes? In Jianghu's view, perhaps there was a disagreement between Qi Jingchun and xuanhuan, 2 senior brothers in the Wenxing Taoist lineage. They each held different views and were in conflict with each other. It was extremely difficult to reconcile the two sides' knowledge. Qi Jingchun, who persuaded Sword Spirit to recognize him as his master, is a scholar who has read the books of sages, so he does not want Qin Pingan to be tainted with Taoism and his nature by foreign objects. He wants Qin Pingan to deliberately keep a distance from Sword Spirit and enter into an agreement of 60 years. Giving the latter more responsibilities, it is an invisible amulet that does not need to appear, it is just used to deter a small group of monks on the mountain top, not to act recklessly based on their realm cultivation. Whoever dares to break the rules will lose all the rules in the world. In this process, of course, there are those who do not believe in evil and are ready to take action, so the ascended ZTE ancestor of Tongya sect has become a ready-made example to remind the people behind the scenes. You must know that even Du Mao's immortal slough is still Luo Lushan's personal property. How could the genealogical monks of Tongya sect's Patriarch Hall not know the inside story of this matter at all? Who would dare to say anything? Anyone who knows a little bit about Luapa Mountain and Master Chen will know why Qin Pingan has always refused to call Qi Jingchun his uncle, and has always respected him as Mr. Qi. The relationship between Qi Jingchun and Qin Pingan is like a well-educated, well-read poetry and calligraphy teacher who taught a certain young boy in his scholarly family how to start a business and crafts. What the former taught was what the latter learned. They are all rushing to become saints and virtuous people. Suddenly one day the older boy said that he no longer wanted to study, so he ran to the mountain, fell into the trap of a bandit, and rose up, saying that he would usurp the throne and become the emperor himself. Precisely because everyone knew the great influence Qi Jingchun had on Qin Pingan, Jianghu felt extremely awkward when he heard Qin Pingan's heroic words of establishing a religion and calling himself his ancestor. If the same young Chao Ci had said such rebellious words, Jianghu wouldn't have felt anything at all. At most he would have been slightly surprised. Chui Chan admired the knowledge of meritorious service and mixed hundreds of schools of thought into one pot. A lake of slips forced Qin Pingan to lose his golden literary courage. Not to mention reading thousands of books and traveling thousands of miles. Even if he read millions of books, traveled to several worlds and traveled the entire world, he was still completely lost. The possibility of cultivating a natal character. Later, at the Sword Chi Great Wall, Qin Pingan combined half of the Sword Chi Great Wall and completely lost the opportunity for the Yin God to travel far away and leave the Yang God. The key is that Cui Zhang's attitude towards Qin Pingan has always been, like some official comments about Beijing's big plans, that his ability is too low, his qualifications are too poor, his Taoist heart is fragile, and he cannot be used in a big way. When the truth comes out one day, what the two brothers Cui Chan and Qi Jingchun did was all a deception. In the field of vision, Qin Pingan returned to his original appearance again, as if he had guessed what Xianxia was thinking. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "You may be mistaken. In our lineage of literary saints, Mr. Qi has the worst temper. Character and patience are the best." Okay, actually it's senior brother Chui. For example, the splitting of Xinyang Mountain was something I learned from senior brother Chui. The success of asking the sword at Xinyang Mountain and the need to erect a monument later was something I learned from Mr. Qi. While talking and walking, those mountains and rivers scenes melted one by one like water flowing, becoming one with the owner. Jiangxi has really seen too many magical powers, so he is not surprised by this. It is okay. Qin Pingan's method is not too scary. Although it does not consume Taoism and spiritual energy, it does consume mental energy. Don't you think there are still too few opportunities to fight with the martial arts master in this life? I will let you eat until you vomit. Pei Bei Zhang Tiaoxia Li Er Song Changjing Wushu Yi Yunyun Wang Fushu. These few limits, let them and you each perform a few punches at their peak. Is that enough? The warriors who had been named by Jiangxi and ordered out one by one formed a horizontal line between him and Qin Pingan. Just like that battlefield with spears and halberds, they are dignified and invincible. Formation is formed at the end of the line, there is a wave of tide, and thousands of horses are ready for change. Qin Pingan seemed to be waiting for this scene to appear. Exhale gently, calm down your mind and start running forward. Jiangxi didn't get the truth from the sword holder, and was quite curious about it, so he had to ask, Qin Qing is not a stingy person. You have done so many things for him and you are half of the Sword Chi Great Wall. As a son-in-law, Qin Qing always owes money, wine, swords, everything but refuses to owe favors. You are also a junior who caught his eye, so he should express himself no matter what. This gift, it's definitely not thin. Why do you feel that you are not in danger of death, so how much more should you hide it? Lest by Yujing's gang of fortune-tellers get away with the secret, and next time the sword is really invincible, it loses the upper hand? Speaking of the words truly invincible, Jiangxi laughed to himself, true invincible, what a good slogan. Why didn't Bai Jing grab it? At this moment, Qin Pingan naturally had no time to distract himself from answering this question. Just because Jiangxi ordered more endless warriors, the top heroes of all eras are all world-famous martial arts masters, each with their own invincibility. Any punch they make is perfect and perfect. Coincidentally, Jiangxi only expended a little energy and did not need to mobilize even a trace of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Jiangxi looked at the exhausted figure on the battlefield, and the more he looked at it, the more boring he felt. Practice martial arts and boxing. In the end, you just get a body and a turtle shell. But one or two punches are your own. I'm afraid of making mistakes by following the rules. I just follow the same path as my predecessors, but it saves me trouble and effort. How dare I hope to surpass Chao Ci? Jiangxi saw that Qin Pingan had half of his cheek knocked off with a punch from Pei Bei, and his neck was almost broken by a mountaintop warrior from barbaric history. Jiangxi shook his head and lost his patience. You, Qin Pingan, dare to even hope to kill Jiangxi and falsely claim to establish a religion and claim to be your ancestor. After all, every Zijing martial artist only delivers the heaviest and most powerful punches in his life, giving Qin Pingan, who is surrounded by danger, some chance to breathe and breathe. It seems that the boy is quite tough, and he can vaguely hear a few words in his hometown dialect. Jiangxi smiled and said, Boy, show off your skills in front of me. Do you know what this is called? This is called. Recognize your ancestors and return to your clan. On the other side of the battlefield, the dust was flying, covering the sky and the sun, and the figures of all the warriors gradually disappeared. All kinds of fists gathered and intertwined, and they had already condensed into a substance as thick as water. Is it to be said that Qin Pingan wanted to sharpen his martial arts by taking the boxing, and take the opportunity to break the bottleneck of the final level? In the midst of a life-and-death battle, with a dispute over the avenues, how dare you be so pretentious? Jianghu didn't know when he had changed his position. With a solemn expression, he gently raised the spear to break the formation. It has been 10,000 years since people and things have fought bravely. Looking at the mustard seed figure in the distance, the ancestor of the military strategist seemed to be disappointed. Jianghu held a spear and walked slowly forward towards the increasingly clear battlefield. He said calmly, "There are no heroes who become famous. I don't know at all. The sky is high and the earth is high." Sword of Coming Chapter 1145. In the wild world, the blue sky is as clear as water, like the green glaze of porcelain, which is about to drip onto the earth at the next moment. Pei Min asked, "Can we really fight against Jianghu?" Zhou Zi nodded and said, "The movement is huge and the impact is far-reaching." Pei Min was amazed. "It's a pity that I can't watch the battle from the sidelines." Zhou Zi said, "Even if you can watch, it's best not to get involved." Pei Min said, "Why?" Zhou Zi said, "Jing Juzhong is present." Pei Min remained silent. Zhou Zi said from the bottom of his heart for no reason, "Friend Bixiao said it well. If he lets Guqin go, he won't let himself go. If he doesn't let Ma Kuxuan go, he will let himself go." Pei Min asked doubtfully, "When did you meet the master of Bixiao Cave?" He followed Zhou Zi to leave Tonggishao and travel to various states in the lower reaches of the Qingming world. They did not go to the bright moon. During this period, even though they knew clearly that the master of Bixiao Cave and the demon swordsman named Shizhu were in the same place, staying at Yao Qing's territory, they also deliberately took a detour. In Pei Min's view, Zhou Zi is not too troublesome, and Bixiao Cave Master doesn't get in the way. But once Zhou Zi decides that it is a problem or Bixiao Cave Master obstructs his way, it will not be a trivial matter. Pei Min is familiar with Lao Huangli and knows that there are 2 or 3 Taoists. Even if they are extremely old and powerful, they still have to hide from the master of Bixiao Cave and dare not meet him. They have been hiding for thousands of years. There is no way. Offended the master of Bixiao Cave, who once used the old Taoist name Kaizhou Taoist, and later built a Taoist temple in Haoran, and he would not let anyone go. In the past 10,000 years, the only one who could make the master of Bixiao Cave less arrogant was Dao Ancestor. Zhou Zi explained, "My Taoist friend Bixiao was a guest at Luopa Mountain." He mentioned Zhou Zi intentionally in his words. Of course he was talking to me. Pei Min was even more confused and asked tentatively, "Since it was done on purpose, what did the master of Bixiao Cave want? As a guest visiting the mountain at that time, how many words did he want to excuse the master of the mountain?" The master of Bixiao Cave has a high vision and a weird temper. His monastic career has lasted for 20,000 years. His Taoist age and seniority are beyond imagination. He rarely favors a young junior, but Pei Min knows very well that the man who once carried a handful of Qin Qingda sword Changqi, and the young mountain master who strayed into the depths of the lotus flower were indeed caught by the Dharma. According to Zhou Zi, this is because the heart and behavior of the straw shoe boy are in line with the temperament of fellow Taoist Bixiao. He is willing to take care of the trivial matters of the world, manages them well, and does not look back when he encounters a wall. Even Lu refused to repent. A man weighing 100 kilograms had to carry a 200 kilograms burden, and he still had fun in the misery. He staggered while carrying the load, grinning and looking at the tomorrow ahead. Zhou Zi was also unsure of that fellow Taoist's true intentions. He shook his head and said, "I don't know yet, the context is not obvious. But when I was about to return to Mingyue Dojo, fellow Taoist Bixiao came and said to me with a smile, 'Don't do it for yourself. Damn to death.'" This is an ancient Taoist saying with great meaning. Taoist priests are not true enough to themselves and deceive themselves and others, which is not tolerated by heaven and earth. After all, there is no way to escape the fate of being turned into ashes. It's just an old saying that gets passed around, but later it changes its meaning and turns into bad rice. Pei Min's expression changed slightly. Zhou Zi talked about the sky and the Lu family. Each person and one surname accounted for half of the Yin-Yang family, but the master of Bixiao Cave wanted to say, "Heaven will destroy the earth." To others like Pei Min, he always felt that there was a murderous aura coming at you. Even if his swordsmanship is as high as that of Pei Min, when he mentioned the old temple master in casual conversation, he would still address him as Bixiao Cave Master, and he would not dare to follow Zhou Zi and address him as a Taoist friend. As if he was afraid of being upset, the old Taoist priest appeared out of thin air and said to him, "Pei Min, are you familiar with me, this poor Taoist? Rumor has it that at the beginning of the Qingming world, when the world was chaotic and the world was created, the master of Bixiao Cave Lingran Yufeng, who had great merit in the entire human world, came here to overlook the mountains and rivers, picked a piece of land that was more pleasing to the eye, and roughly drew a circle with a whisk. Without consulting the Taoist ancestors who built by Yujing, they set aside Kaizhou as a Taoist temple. As a result, a dispute arose with a Taoist priest on the top of the mountain who first came to Kaizhou to open a cave. The latter was able to accumulate military exploits and survive in the battle of ascending to the sky, and he was not a good person to get along with. After leaving the cave, he showed his true body and dharma, and sacrificed a group of well-refined treasures, so he wanted to compete with that bull-nosed one. Next, the Taoist law has seen the true seal, and the end result is that it is naturally defeated in a fight, so it has to show weakness and beg for mercy. The master of Bixiao Cave refuses to give up, and wants to take the great monk as a gatekeeper for the dojo. The monk is a hero who has experienced hundreds of battles and is famous. He is unwilling to suffer such humiliation. He has no choice but to use the escape method. He abandons the cave and is forced to leave Kaizhou to avoid its sharp edges and seek a cave in ancient Pizhou. He asked for the protection of a Taoist friend, so the master of Bixiao Cave followed behind him in no hurry. The Taoist friend who occupied the area as king and set up his own flag was also considered to be loyal. Although he hesitated and thought about it over and over, he still opened the door. There are 2 steels at the entrance of the cave that are inscribed with "Golden Well" and "No Sound." It is forbidden for monks to enter, but it is absolutely forbidden. You should not be tempted to complain to the fellow Taoist who is in trouble. You provoke that stubborn temper. What are you doing with your stinky nose? This was good, and the master of Bixiao Cave listened to it. As a result, the 2 Taoist friends shared the blessings and hardships, and became companions on the escape road. It is said that the righteous Taoist friend Bo Yintian was hiding everywhere. Although he was not caught by the master of Bixiao Cave, he failed to successfully overcome the tribulation and failed to achieve harmony on the way of practice. He was reincarnated and then wandered around the mountains and the world. The final destination was still the Donghaiguan Taoist temple, and he became a Taoist boy who made alchemy. Pei Min smiled and said, "In Wang Zhu's Donghaijian mansion the 2 of them didn't fight. Is it because they both have the surname Qin?" Zhou Zi explained, "Both parties have similar life experiences. When they were young they were in similar situations. They were extremely bleak, so Qin Qinglu tolerated it as long as he could. If someone else dared to stand in the way with his usual temper, he would have drawn his sword long ago." Pei Min said, "I have to admit that Qin Pinggan's elder relationship is indeed good." Zhou Zi said, "At that time, Qin Qinglu actually wanted to take advantage of the situation and help Qin Pinggan walk to a more stable fork in the road. It is said to be a fork in the road, but compared to the latter's established road, it is still a main road. But Qin Pinggan, it is destined to be impossible to accept this kindness." Pei Min asked, "How?" Zhou Zi said, "For example, if you choose to be hacked to death by Qin Qinglia's swords and turn into a ghost, you have enough reasons to ignore the general trend of the world and just lie dormant, cultivate your mind and nature, and just take care of the housework in Luolu Mountain. After practicing Taoism in seclusion for hundreds of years with Qin Pinggan's mind, it is not difficult to find a sword path that is closer to pure, and climb to the top step by step. When one day the realm is high enough, he can then trouble by Yujing." Pei Min thought for a while and agreed, "Becoming a ghost is not a small price to pay, but it is a safe shortcut to not have to worry about external affairs and be able to refine swords in the mountains, concentrate on cultivating Taoism, and pursue purity as much as possible." Zhou Zi said, "You still underestimated Qin Pinggan's spirit." Pei Min smiled and said, "How angry do you have to be underestimated by me and fellow Taoist Qingzhu?" Zhou Zi said, "Where the heart is, there is the word struggle." Pei Min said, "In the past I didn't dare to have anything, but now I dare to fight for anything. It's really an earth-shaking change in my mentality." Zhou Zi said, "That's not necessarily the case. The mind has not gone to extremes, but has escaped from the trap and returned to a comfortable state. When Qin Pinggan was a boy, he had a fierce fight over the corridor bridge. At that time, Qi Jingchun told him not to stop. Take a few steps forward. It seems to be encouragement, but in fact it is Qin Pinggan's true intention. Without this background as support, I am afraid that the Supreme Being will not even look at Qin Pinggan." Pei Min suddenly laughed and said, "People who have stolen watermelons and eaten them are different." Zhou Zi nodded and said, "Correct his position, put his heart at ease and calm his mind." Pei Min raised his chin and said, "Here we come." Lu Tai held a bamboo trekking pole and chopped wildflowers along the way. he slowly walked towards the preaching mentors of the two people on the mountain. When he met his mentor, his opening words were a very disrespectful statement of accountability. "Why do you insist on doing this?" Targeting Qin Pingan? Pei Min, a tall and thin old man who is one of the top 3 masters of Haoran and a master of swordsmanship, said, "Did you get the order wrong?" In the Daquan dynasty of Tongyi's Hao, there was a question of swordsmanship in the reign at Tiangong Temple outside the city. Pei Min, who had been pretending to be Gao Guogong's butler for decades, had murderous intent, but there was no murderous intention in his heart. It was more like a swordplay. Of course, if the young Yingguan couldn't catch it at all, he would be a dead man. For this reason, the people from going to the sea to visit the immortals looked for him again. Ning Yao left the colorful world with his sword and came to Haoran world, and also looked for him. As for Cui Dongshan and Jiang Shangzhen, they have been secretly looking for him these years. Whereabouts? However, Pei Min accompanied Zhou Zi on a secret trip to Qingming world. The latest 10 people and candidates were created by Zhou Zi. Therefore, it is said that Zhou Zi lives without a fixed abode and walks around the world, without leaving the ground, which is not only aimed at the swordmaster Qin Pingan, but also at Baiyujing Taoist Judo, and by the way, it is also aimed at the head of the Lu family in China. In short, whether Lu Shen, who has already reached the Ascension realm, can join the Tao, and when he can reach the 14th realm, all depends on Zhou Zi's wishes. Lu Tai said with a playful smile, "I used to hide from you, but now I hide from Ning Yao. Second master, you are promising." Pei Min smiled and said, "Good apprentice. You are afraid of heights." It can be seen that the relationship between master and apprentice is not bad. When Lu Chen found Lu Tai, he talked about Lu Kai and Lu Kai by the way and mentioned Zhou Zi as if to catch up. Lu Tai did not dare to hide the matter and said from the bottom of his heart, "Master, Lu Xiasaner came to me earlier. He has always been carefree and it is rare for him to say something serious." Zhou Zi didn't need to deduce the content of the conversation between the two parties, he could guess a rough idea and asked, "I asked you to help me pass a sentence. Shouldn't I ask him about you?" Lu Tai nodded. That's pretty much what he meant. Zhou Zi smiled and said, "The best is to rebel against yourself, and the second is to seek help from others. Master Lu is not so narrow-minded. He is deliberately keeping a straight face to scare you. Generally speaking, if you want to attain enlightenment and live forever, you will have too much time to take care of yourself. You will have no time to relax and care about the world around you. You will not dare to be distracted casually." Of course, Lu Chen is not an ordinary person, but more like that ancient person who seeks immortality and explores life and death. Life is temporary, death is temporary. That's why Gao Gu of Difei Mountain admired Lu Chen so much. In his last sermon he said that if anyone could learn Lu Chen's 70 to 80% essence of life and death, his or her monastic career would be free of life and death. Not only the Taoist priest Gao Gu, but also the old scholars of the literary sage, all would have their own sincere admiration for Lu Chen's knowledge. Lu Tai looked at the two people behind him and couldn't help but sigh in his heart, they were just following the same thing. The young man is tall and muscular, wearing coarse linen clothes, carrying a sword and walking slowly, with 2 simple gourds hanging on his waist. Next to him was a young woman with a cold face, wearing colorful clothes and extremely gorgeous beauty. The only drawback is that the woman's appearance is too plain, and the dazzling robe seems to be a pity for being unkind to others. Lu Kai, a swordsman, is in the Yupu realm. The female cultivator is in Lu Kai's state. Finally seeing these two selves, Lu Tai, as the rightful master, had a complicated expression. There is a yang outside the body, and a yin traveling far away from the body. Lu Tai looked at them and they looked at Lu Tai. Lu Kai smiled and said, "We don't look at you with resentment or hatred, so why do you look at us like thieves?" Lu Kai said, "It's easy to understand." Without saying a word, he beat him up and covered up his guilty conscience. Lu Tai returned to normal and said with a smile, "You two are just sitting here talking about drama." It can be said that Lu Kai is extremely talented and blessed. He is truly a first-class figure who emerged at the right time. The first time his name was known to the world, he was included in several lists of the top 10 young people in the world. There is destined to be a sword battle with the young hermit official who was recently hailed as the most famous in the past 30 years. The sword cultivator's ancestry, teacher training, and resume are all blank. It is only said that Bai Yes fairy sword Tai Bai was divided into 4 parts after the Battle of Fuyao Island, and each one recognized its master according to their fate. Qin Pingan obtained the most lethal sword tip and used it to refine the night sword. Lu Kai got the part of the sword that contained the most sword energy. To use Cui Dongshan's saying, he became famous without doing anything. How could there be such cheap and good things in the world? Lu Kai's ancestral home is the blessed green land controlled by the Lu family in Aizhou. The Tianjing blessed land where the female cultivator Lu Kai was born is also the private property of the Lu family. Green Shade blessed land is the one with the largest number of people among the 72 blessed lands. It is a lower-class blessed land with as many as 90 million people. However, with as much money as Lu Jubao, it has deliberately not improved the rank of the blessed land. Therefore, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is thin. If you want to practice Taoism and become an immortal, it is almost just talk in books. As long as someone accidentally walks onto the path of cultivation and is able to advance all the way to the cave realm, he will be taken away from the blessed land of Green Shade. It stands to reason that a blessed land with such a large number of local people can be realized and create a cornucopia of wealth. It is said that the Lu family, which has 2 magicians, has convinced Lu Jubao not to do this very early. Make money. On the other hand, in the Tianjing blessed land, Lu Jubao spent money all the way and was promoted from a lower-class blessed land to a high-class one. To this day, every year at the beginning of spring, the Lu family still maintains a tradition, which is to let the younger generation of Lu women stand in the sky and throw varying amounts of snow money into the world. It is said that the smallest amount is tens of thousands. The goddess scatters flowers as beautiful as a mural. Lu Kai was brought out of the Green Shade blessed land by Zhou Zi himself, but it was Yuan Bai, the sword repairman of the old Zhuang dynasty who traveled alone in Aizu, who took her away from the Tianjing blessed land. Probably Lu Tai felt that there was nothing to talk about with them, so he went to catch up with the 2 preachers again. Lu Kai asked, "How many natal flying swords does Mr. Pei own?" Lu Kai said, 4. "I have only seen 3 of them so far." Lu Kaiben just asked casually, but he still had more curious questions to ask. "Do you like making money so much? You are not short of money either. It's true that people with different fates have different fates. There seems to be nothing surprising about Lu Kai. However, Lu Kai owns 2 sword-raising gourds made by Taozu. He uses the mind gourd to warm his natal flying sword by Luo, and uses, immediately, Wenyang Feijian White Horse. Lu Kai said, "It's just that we are not short of money now and I was afraid of poverty before. Now that I am learning the sword smoothly and have 2 gourds, there is no need to spend all day refining the sword. I have to find something to do. If you want to read a book, just do it. Spend money on it." Without family background or imperial examination success, those with scholarly family backgrounds and local gentry's libraries will have a higher threshold. Occasionally, someone is willing to open the door and you have to look at the person's face when entering to copy books. It's easy to say that he is not allowed to light a lamp. The servants look at him as if he is on guard against thieves. Yes, every time a book is returned, the servant will stare hard at the fingernails of his hands. Lu Kai asked, "You were in Xinjiang Mountain at that time and witnessed the sword questioning with your own eyes. How did you feel?" Lu Kai pouted with a nonchalant look on his face. "It's not you. I'm in the Lujin realm. I'm lowly and can't see the truth." In the previous scene of the sword asking Xinjiang Mountain, Qin Pingan and Lu Xianying met at the Gyunla Inn. He seemed extremely cautious. Facts have proved that Qin Pingan is not unfounded and is not suspicious. There is a real ghost. At that time, not only Ma Kuxuan and Yu Shiwu were waiting for the opportunity, but Zhou Zi was also watching. The mantis catches the cicada, the oriole behind, and the slingshot below. Therefore, Qin Pingan suddenly stopped outside the threshold of the Yixin Peak Ancestral Hall in Xinjiang Mountain. He looked at the beautiful female cultivators from Wamafang and talked to them, to himself, as if they had a discussion. Zhou Zi is not as good as him. Hold off on asking about the sword? After that, Qin Pingan crossed the threshold and got down to business. Zhou Zi obviously agreed to this agreement and taken back Lu Kai, who was working as a maid for Jianxiu Yuan Bai at Duishue Peak. At that time, the peaks of Xinjiang Mountain were in chaos. Even a talented swordsman like Wu Tijing left the genealogy and rebelled against the sect. There was no spare power to save anything, let alone an unknown woman practicing xianxia. Scholar. Lu Kai asked, "How do you feel about being your enemy? Are you nervous?" "Of course I will be nervous, but it won't hinder Wenjian." Lu Kai stayed in Tonggishao for several years and said, "By digging a large road, countless lives can be saved. To say that the merits are immeasurable is not excessive. The key is that this move can make the stagnant Tonggishao, people and money on the mountain and down the mountain move. With this movement, Tonggishao will have unlimited vitality. It's an honor to be able to ask about swordsmanship with such a person." Lu Kai smiled and said, "As expected, I like reading and my words are nice. I should go to an academy and become a master." Lu Kai smiled and said, I think so. Lu Kai raised her chin high towards the sky. You were targeted by that guy and found the Taoist temple in the mountain for him. If you were a few days late in going down the mountain, you might have been caught. Aren't you afraid? Note 1. It turns out that under Zhoumi's instruction, Xianxia landed in Tongy's for 2 purposes, one of which was to find Lu Kai. If she can find Lu Kai, Zhoumi can naturally find Zhou Zi. As for finding it, what is Zhoumi's plan? Maybe he wants to be honest with Zhou Zi to see if there is any chance of cooperation. Why talk on Earth? Why not go up to the sky to see the Earth and unify the 5 elements Yin and Yang family? Or maybe one of them just ate it without reaching agreement. Maybe just take a walk, compare notes, and talk about the world? Zhoumi once took his first disciple Shou Qin to visit an inconspicuous Taoist temple in Tongy's. The owner of the temple was a Taoist priest who was in the Sevuing realm. In those troubled times, the few apprentices and the resident Taoist priests were allowed to stay in the mountains and practice hard. The old Taoist priest used an excuse to travel around the world and went out alone to slay demons and eliminate demons, hoping to do his best to help the world see the light of day again. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years have passed, and the flowers in the mountain have bloomed and fallen several times. The temple is as clean and elegant as ever, and the Taoist priests in the temple are still waiting for the master or the old Taoist priest who is the ancestor to return to the mountain and go home. Zhoumi used a calculation method on the little Taoist boy and picked up some threats. Lu Kai is just a local native, not a Taoist priest. The little Taoist boy at the gate only knew that the country bumpkin nicknamed Lu Mudu was related to the big pilgrims in the temple, so he could often do business with the Taoist temple, selling mountain goods in exchange for some copper coins and broken silver. Lu Kai shook his head. The soldiers will come to block the water and the earth. If you can't stop it, you will die. Besides, if he is found, the result will be good or bad. It seems that it is something that cannot be verified. In short, it is useless to think too much. Lu Kai clicked her tongue and said, You are quite open-minded. Lu Kai said calmly, A living person cannot be suffocated to death by peeing. With a playful look on her face, she said, I have an illusion that you are very similar to Qin Pingan. You are a money lover, good at studying, willing to endure hardships, and have a good mentality. You are young and have many opportunities, but you can hold them all in your hands. Lu Kai laughed dumbly. You said it yourself was an illusion. Lu Kai thought to himself and said, That's right, it's not all the enemy in us, it has to be some kind of upright gentleman and the evil guy competing over there. It's common for bad people to kill bad people and good people to kill good people. Lu Kai said, I really couldn't survive back then. If it weren't for Mr. Zhou, I don't know where I would have been reincarnated in this life. Lu Kai smiled and said, The book says this is called a dead soldier. Lu Kai said, This is also fate. Everyone has to collect debts and repay debts throughout his life. Everyone needs to pay both debts. Lu Kai's voice was soft and waxy as if she had a local accent, and she said a common saying, Nu also feels that he has some, and his life is not as low as his life. Lu Kai did not agree with this statement and shook his head and said, Everyone has his own destiny and the pursuit is the same. Either seek wealth in danger or find a way to survive in death. Lu Kai murmured, Oh fate. That young Taoist priest named Lu Qin just started walking, and then another guest followed him? What's going on? Do you really think this is a temple fair? The monk suddenly opened his eyes and saw ripples in the distance. He could vaguely see a tall, vague figure gradually approaching, with a strict treasure appearance and perfect Taoist skills. The monk's Taoist heart was shaking violently. He was really afraid that something might happen. Could it be that Lu Qin had leaked his whereabouts? The world of Qingming is really in decline. In order to please the master of Bixiao Cave in Luobaotan, he will do any dirty deeds. Isn't it just a freshly released 15 realms? What are you afraid of? No matter how high the Taoism is, can it be higher than the Taoist ancestors? Seeing the enemy again who wanted to skin him, eat his flesh and drink his blood, the monk's expression was uncertain, and he did not dare to say anything. The old Taoist priests were already tall, and the fact that one was standing and the other was sitting made it even more obvious that the latter was small in stature and of low moral character. The monk simply closed his eyes. The old Taoist priest was not in a hurry to speak. He patiently looked at the acquaintance who seemed to have some misunderstandings with each other. The old Taoist priest was silent for a moment and said with a smile, Hey, isn't this some Taoist friend? I'm sorry, it's been too long, and I haven't interacted with fellow Taoists for so long that I accidentally forgot about it. The monk gritted his teeth and said nothing, determined to pretend to be an idiot. The old Taoist priest nodded to himself and said in approval, It is true that a skilled person is brave and will not be intimidated by anyone when he goes out to meet anyone. Compared with the past, a certain Taoist friend still has the same courage. Although his speaking power is a bit weaker, his concentration has not increased. Phew. The monk who had even accidentally forgotten his Taoist name by the master of Bixiao Cave opened his eyes wide and stopped pretending. His eyes suddenly turned red with grief and anger, and he said angrily, "Isn't it just that you complained a few times at the beginning that you were climbing? Tian-yi chooses to stand by and watch, greedy for life and afraid of death. Isn't he not heroic enough? How much hatred can he be so aggressive, seize my cave, cut off my incense, miss my path and kill me?" The old Taoist priest smiled and said nothing. In the eyes of acquaintances, it's just that it's a bit perceptive. Probably because he was afraid that he would turn into anger, the monk stood up without the slightest hint of flinching. A futon made of calamity ashes blew away in the wind. The monk standing in the ashes had a youthful appearance that could be seen with the naked eye. The speed all of a sudden became old, and he ignored the terrible signs that the Taoist power was dissipating like a flood. He had accumulated resentment and grievances for countless years, and he couldn't express his grievances. He pointed at the nose of the tall old Taoist priest and started to curse. "Get up, smelly cow nose, the Tao master has to live here and live an ignoble life. How many thousand years has it been? Okay, I have chased you here, the Tao master just accepts the defeat. Come on, slap me if you can. Kill Tao master and it will be over. Don't dare to fight back anymore, just sacrifice your magic weapon and have a discussion of Taoism." The old Taoist priest sighed, "Idiot." The monk looked around. There was nothing on the futon. Once the ashes of the calamity were scattered, the idea of seeking death was completely lost. The only way out was a dead end. The monk was heartbroken, with tears on his face. "It's over, it's all over." The old Taoist priest's eyes were filled with pity. "You have gone astray without realizing it, and you have wasted your energy and secretly rejoiced. In the end you have failed to draw water from a bamboo basket. How can you cultivate the Tao?" The monk was cruel and continued to curse, breaking the jar and smashing it. Since he was found by this stinky nose, he was going to die anyway, so he had to find some happiness to make it worth it. The old Taoist priest shook his head, with a somewhat sad and angry look on his misfortune. "Back then I saw that you had misled me, and you were greedy for heaven's merits. It's not easy to think that you still have some nature. It's your turn to have a relationship with a poor Taoist. A fairy tale in the mountains was supposed to be a good reunion. I didn't want you to rot, so I deliberately pulled you out of the furnace of burning oil to help you find a chance to survive. But you are stupid and ignorant. Tianji, after so many years, still can't understand it. I can only sit still and be obsessed with it. How can the puppet in the shrine, which has obviously changed its course and lost its time and place, be called the true Tao in nature, governed by inaction?" When the monk heard this, his face was dull. The old Taoist priest shook his head, turned around and left, leaving behind a final sentence. "To mend a lost cause, it will be empty. If you mislead others and yourself, you will let yourself down." The monk was not stupid after all. He hurriedly caught up and said, "Master Bixiao Cave, save me." The old Taoist priest didn't turn his head and sneered, "Aren't you a hero now? Don't you call yourself a Taoist master now?" The monk looked ashamed. The old Taoist priest didn't bother to talk nonsense with him and said, "The newly opened cave by Pindao is now in the bright moonlight. If you don't feel embarrassed, go there and be the caretaker of the mountain gate, the warehouse and the identity of a guest. If you don't want to, it's reasonable and I won't force it. With the little Taoism you have left, it's a bit far-fetched to fight with others. But when it comes to Qingming Tianxia, you can choose the Taoist sect at will. What's the difficulty in being a guest of honor and hanging a portrait on the wall?" The monk immediately said, "I would like to practice Taoism with Senior Bixiao." The old Taoist priest said, "Lengmiatsi has little incense and the food is plain. I am afraid that fellow Taoists will condescend to it." The monk hurriedly said some polite words, then remembered something and said cautiously, "Congratulations to the cave master for reaching the 15th realm." The old temple master raised his eyebrows slightly and chuckled, "That's easy to say. Walking together in this place, no matter how talented the poets and writers are, they cannot describe the desolation of this place. According to legend, the Taoist ancestor traveling far and wide. He saw many things that were very strange and mysterious, unimaginable, indescribable and indescribable. Daozu once revealed the secret to the master of Bixiao Cave. It turns out that my hometown is a plateau, located in the ancestral land of dragon veins in the world, and is the origin of thousands of small worlds in the sky. The ancestral land is called Kunlun. What the Buddha and Luqian saw back then was one of the small thousand worlds. However, Bixiao Cave Master's reminder could not be ignored, so Gu He made up his mind to just pretend to be deaf and dumb. The old spectator smiled and said, Huang Zhen, since several attempts to kill Qin Pingan failed, and the effect of preventing him from climbing up the road was extremely limited, he turned to make a desperate gamble and made a big gamble. Unfortunately, he failed to intercept and kill Lu Qin. Don't you dare to move away and escape? Master Lu has a broad heart and will probably not argue with you. As for Qin Pingan's temper of holding grudges since he was a child, you don't know. If you insist on waiting for him to come to your door, are you going to learn from Xingyang Mountain or horse racing? Ku Xian. Why, it was written in the book that Pindao was destined to die not long ago, but there was still a clear sentence that recorded that this fellow Taoist next to Pindao would return to Daoshan on a certain day in a certain year, month and day, and was destined not to live a long life. You can't prove immortality, so you squat on the side of the road in advance, waiting for opportunities. As expected, an expert will know if there is one as soon as he takes action. Huang Zhen sighed after hearing this. Fellow Taoist Bixiao is indeed a scholar of heaven and man, and is one of the true seers of the Tao throughout the ages. The old spectator waved his hand, refusing to accept such flattery. Boy, since I have glimpsed some secrets, I am lucky enough to be able to control the descendant of the yin-yang fish. To use an inappropriate analogy, I can use it between two knots. Being able to move around without hindrance can be said to have the upper hand. Having the authority to decide the direction of thousands of roads without authorization is a great freedom that ordinary people would find unimaginable. Normally, one should cherish blessings and even more cherish one's life. That's right, you're not an ordinary person. If you follow the rules, you won't get here. Huang Zhen said nothing. The speaker was intentional, and the listener was even more intentional. Gu He's Taoist heart moved slightly as if he had some realization. After thinking for a moment, he reached out his sleeve and used Taoism to reveal a writing brush. He held the pen barrel in one hand and pressed the tip of the finger with the other. At one point, you can see the group of hairs bending together with different arcs. If the tip of the hairs is regarded as the end point of one person and one thing, a certain node, then all the slender brush hairs are roads with fixed ends, no matter how winding, far or near, regardless of whether the road is rugged or flat. After shaking his head, Gu He still felt that there were some shortcomings and could not withstand more scrutiny, so he gave up. It was really too much effort and futile fantasy. It's better to go and guard the gate of Taoist Bixiao's dojo. Serving as a mountain protector for a 15th level monk, his face is bright but he is shabby. Gu He just silently wrote down the name, Qin Pingan. A person who was said to be vindictive by the master of Bixiao Cave? Could it be that when this guy was in a bad mood, he went out to travel to relax, and whoever met him on the road ended up half dead just by looking at him one more time? As for what Bixiao Cave Master said about the yin and yang fish, does it seem to be a real thing? It was indeed the first time Gu He heard about it, so he silently paid attention to it. Huang Zhen asked a key question straightforwardly. Does fellow Taoist Bixiao want to stand up for Qin Pingan and protect him? The old temple master smiled and said, Qin Pingan and I are neither relatives nor friends, nor are we masters and disciples. Why go to such trouble to forcibly break the Taoist lineage of this great temple, and just sit back and watch Taoism with cold eyes? Huang Zhen nodded and said, You can trust fellow Taoist Bixiao. Gu He on the side was a bit slanderous. Can he really trust fellow Taoist Bixiao? It's because he can't beat the master of Bixiao Cave, right? The old spectator was no stranger to Huaihuang County and Lizhu Cave. He shook his sleeves, raised his palms, and began to count with his fingers and make some deductions. Between the knuckles of the old Taoist priest's 4 fingers, the characters of 10 heavenly stems appeared. The 10 characters were arranged in a circle, just like the layout of a copper coin with a round sky and a square place. It was unusual. The old Taoist priest pressed it with his thumb first. For the word Gue, go backwards to the word A, and then start with the word A, and go forward. It's ridiculous to say that the dispute between Huang Zhen and Qin Pingan traces back to its origins, but it was just a debt of 100 taels of silver. The most interesting thing is that neither party was present. The Huang Zhen family's house is not far from Mu Ping Lane, and there is a well next to it. However, compared to the iron lock well that is overcrowded every morning, it is inconspicuous. It belongs to the private wells of several nearby families. The well is small, shallow, and easy to use. Get water. There is also a vegetable garden there, an alley even narrower than Mud Bottle Alley, which is often icy and slippery in winter. Qin Pingan once took Qin Lingjun through the narrow alley and past the vegetable garden. Things were different and people were different. Huang Jun seemed to be feeling something and said to himself, "When I was young, my heart was as high as the sky, and I always felt that fame and wealth were within my reach. When I was young, I ran into obstacles everywhere, but I still didn't believe in fate. I believed that all the hardships now are the steps to advance in the next year. In the prime of life, the will is depressed, and I realize a truth. The short and deep water is the life and the ancestral shade. The water I drink, whether it is wealth or longevity, is just a flower in a dream, and the moon in the well is willing to accept my fate." I suddenly look back. You will feel that the small well in your hometown is a peaceful life. Unexpectedly, at this moment things turn around. I enter the mountains, learn the Tao, and start the journey of refining qi, and I know that there is a different world. Huang Zhen was a few years younger than Qin Pingan. He had known Qin Pingan when he was young, but the two parties had never spoken. After all, except for Fulu Street and Taoye Lane, almost all the old, young women and children in the rest of the town where there is no one who doesn't know Qin Pingan. Huang Zhen's family has an average financial background, but he has no problem studying. In the morning and evening at school or after class, I met Qin Pingan by chance, who was wandering around with nothing to do every day like black coal, and we just went our separate ways. Invariably they will all give way. General actions, two states of mind. One is that the elders in the family and the women in the neighborhood usually talk about it too much, and they are afraid of being brought into bad luck. One is that he is afraid of causing trouble to others and being unpopular. At that time, a dark and shy orphan and a delicate and fair-skinned boy probably didn't know what the future was or what the future was. Maybe the so-called tomorrow is the day to continue reading and literacy, or maybe tomorrow is the day to continue the empty rice vat. At that time, if Qin Pingan met Huang Zhen's mother on the road, he would call her second aunt. Even if the woman felt awkward, she would still nod and smile. As for when the woman was with Ruanxiu later, she said that Qin Pingan often came to the house to have rice when he was a child. He would not give the fish in the bowl to his son and put it into Qin Pingan's bowl. Naturally, this was not true. Just because earlier Qin Pingan's father was good at kiln and porcelain making, and the man in the neighborhood would teach him if he asked. Therefore, the relationship between the two families in the early years was indeed not bad, and they would at least visit each other from time to time. Later, when the weather changed, Huang Zhen quickly moved to Zhouqing with his elders, where the family purchased land, houses, and shops, and lived a good life with plenty of money. The old temple owner said slowly, "In the courtyard of the backyard of Yang's medicine shop, there is a stick of incense like you." The incense was not low at that time and it was ranked very high. But it turned out that it was very difficult to die, and it provoked Ruanxiu, who was disgusted by her. It's like taking one foot off the gambling table. After that, your luck will be weak. Huang Zhen remained silent. How could he, a big kid, know such secrets back then? After that, I tried to change the results again and again with the help of the tide of the long river of time, but ultimately failed. Either he couldn't stop Qin Pingan or he finally stopped him but couldn't achieve his goals. There was no way to have both. The old temple master said, "A woman asks for 100 taels of silver on the street, but she can actually give her a price in return, 50 taels? Is 30 taels enough?" Huang Zhen looked as usual. "I will be satisfied if I can get 10 taels of silver." Later, when his family fell into decline, the young Huang Zhen began to blame everyone. Later there were always assumptions and what-ifs. If he had been a few years older, he would have been in the same year as Lin Shui and Dong Shuijing, the year when the town changed. Will he follow Qin Pingan and the others to study at Sui Cliff Academy, and naturally become Qi Jingchun's direct disciple and one of the successors of literary saint? If you are traveling far away for the first time and become disgraced when you first return home, are you willing to go to Luapa Mountain and take the initiative to find the already successful Qin Pingan to relieve your worries? Can I just stay there and practice? After going through ups and downs, seeking immortality and cultivating Taoism, Huang Zhen gradually made his way to the top of the mountain, and finally learned the truth, which was inevitably heartbreaking. Before going up the mountain, I had no ambitions. I was wandering in a foreign land with no one to rely on. On the way, he always remembered a certain scene clearly, which made Huang Zhen sleepless. Every time he thought about it, he would feel heartbroken. The so-called unforgettable scene was nothing more than that. After the weather changed, before moving, there was a lot of commotion. A large group of women went to Yang's shop to cause trouble. The old man Yang in the backyard once glanced at Huang Zhen coldly and said something strange with a strange look. Huang Zhen said something strange back then. Zhen was confused, but he remembered every word. It's a pity that the 100 taels of silver given to your mother has abruptly cut off the road to immortality. In the future, when you can't gain a foothold in the mountains in the west and are displaced from your hometown, think more about what I said today. Note, 2. The old temple master said, the biggest drawback in life is dissatisfaction with what you already have, and resentment that you still don't have it. Huangjin said, the 14th realm of Hadao, a single plank bridge, is there a way back? Guhi hated hearing about He Dao and 14 realms. Huangjin laughed it off. The old viewer said, the small town of Lizhu Cave, a small place, is much better than the Wuling boys from the Qingxin dynasty and the sword fairy embryos of the same age and in the same place in the wilderness. Chen Pingan from Mu Bottle Lane, and Zhu from the next-door neighbor, the true Dragon King. Huangjin, a city with a great tide. It's just a pity that Xinghua Lane Ma Xuan, otherwise there would have been one more 14th realm person in the world. There are 3 alleys in the town, a palm-sized area. Why, the 14th realm is so worthless you can just gather a table and play mahjong. At the top of the mountain, all the monks who knew the inside story were either regretful or unexpected that Qi Jingchun suffered the catastrophe and died. I understand that it was the duty of a scholar. Those who don't understand say it's a woman's kindness. The Philistines said that Qi Jingchun had made a huge loss in this transaction. In fact, it's not that troublesome. You only need to look hundreds or more than 1,000 years in the future, and then just calculate the accounts on paper to know whether Qi Jingchun's actions made a profit or a loss. The old temple owner asked, what is the cost of getting to this point? Huangjin shook his head and said, don't teach to outsiders. The old temple master asked, sword cultivator? Huangjin looked calm and nodded. The old temple master asked again, pure? Huangjin still nodded, looking a little proud. The old temple master nodded and said, with the word pure you can be proud of yourself. You really have the capital to be equal to anyone you meet. Guhi suddenly understood, no wonder the boy dared to be so supportive of the master of Bixiao Cave. He turned out to be an extremely rare pure sword cultivator of the 14th realm. Huangjin suddenly became bright and energetic. I have loved reading biographies of knight-errant assassins all my life, and I love a 5-character quatrain the most. Guhi knew clearly in his heart that this man was sneaky in his behavior, and he was indeed someone who liked to read biographies of assassins. However, Guhi became more and more determined in an idea. The guy named Qin Pingan was definitely not easy to mess with. The reason couldn't be simpler. If he was a good guy, how could he possibly provoke someone in the 14th realm like Huangjin? No matter what, if I see that guy in the future I will definitely take a detour. Perhaps it was because he had been sitting here for so many years and had not chatted with anyone for too long. Huangjin was particularly eloquent today, saying, the person who composed the poem was a contemporary of the Confucian Temple's deputy master Han. In the Imperial Examination articles, there is a cicada about the disease. In the middle of the winter, I wrote the sentence, the oriole and the crow all want to harm the cicada. I dared to write this and of course I failed. Then there was this quatrain which was the first time I saw it. I feel sad when I look through this person's collection of poems. At first glance, the poems are full of lonely people on cold grass, ruined halls and broken post houses, emaciated horses and autumn fireflies and cold moon and dead trees. It makes people feel like they are seeing a person outside the book. The emaciated scribe with a bitter look on his face, hungry and full of untimely complaints, just watched it a few more times and the aftertaste was gone. It turns out that there is really someone who can transport the strange, lonely, grotesque and many other images one by one into the ordinary. The situation is like hundreds of rivers flowing into the sea. The old observer smiled knowingly. It's okay for scholars to complain a few times. If you dare to write like this in an Imperial Examination article, you are very capable. He is an honest person with a temper. It's amazing if he can become a high official. Huangjin murmured to himself, the name of the poem is The Swordsman, and it is also titled The Story of the Sword. After 10 years of sharpening a sword, the frost blade has never been tested. Today I am showing you to you who has any injustice. How many 10 years has he been practicing sword making in Huangjin? Been waiting for many years. Finally the opportunity came for Qin Pingan to fight with Jiangxi. You Qin Pingan, dare to take the sword? There are only a handful of those who are serving prison terms in the Merit Forest of the Zhongtu Confucian Temple and can open up a secret place in the mountains and rivers and be held in solitary confinement with such high treatment. There are only a few visitors on Lu Cha's side, less than a handful of visitors. That day I walked into an old man in a green shirt and long coat. He put his hands behind his back and saw Lu Cha squatting by the river fishing. He stood aside as if waiting for Lu Cha's catch. Lu Cha just repeatedly lifted the rod to scatter the bait, rubbed the bait and threw the rod again, just pretending that the visitor beside him did not exist. The old man seemed to be patient and asked directly, "Anyway, we rely on eating the big demon to increase our strength. No one is eating. Since Zhomi has the ability to be picky, why don't he just eat you too?" The visitor was Qin Qinglu, who was wandering around to relax. He had previously traveled to the wild world, and this time he had just returned from the Buddhist kingdom in the west. He planned to visit the Qingming world again in the near future. Of course Lu Cha recognized the other party's identity and said, "Eat me." Of course Zhomi is very good at fighting, but if he really beats a pure swordsman in the 14th realm, there is no question whether his power will increase or his ability will decrease. Qin Qinglu nodded and said, "Even if I forcefully eat you, it will probably be difficult for Zhomi to digest it in a short period of time, and he will easily suffer from diarrhea." After all, Lu Cha had a complete swordsmanship back then. Lu Cha was probably so disgusted by Qin Qingli's statement that he had no intention of speaking anymore. Qin Qinglu said, "Once Li Sheng seizes the opportunity and finds out where the loopholes in Zhoumi's Dao are, then the two sides will fight. As long as they fight, it will be earth-shaking. As long as they can be sure to kill Zhomi with Li Sheng's temper, no matter what the sacrifice, no matter what the cost, they would definitely take action." Cui Chan and Qi Jingchen had teamed up to test Zhomi, and they may not have helped Li Sheng examine the quality of Tongyi's Avenue at that time. Judging from the results, Zhomi did not give them this opportunity. Lu Cha was not interested in these. Choosing carefully who to eat back then was also a skill. Lu Cha casually said, "Yangji Fei Fei and his ilk are needed for their work on the battlefield, and their retention is of great use. They each have a prototype of a great road at their feet." At that time, Toyua Mountain thought that it occupied at least half of the Howran world is still confident. It depends on this group of great demons of the throne who are expected to unite in Howran to erode and weaken the rules of the sage bit by bit. We must use this kind of conspiracy to win the right time, place and people. You Howran are the main ones. If you eat them early, the gain will not be worth the loss. Whether it is an official or a sect, knowledge only depends on whether there are available people at hand. Even if it is a cook, it does not matter. Also need ingredients and condiments? It is true that the great demon of the throne like Lu Cha has extremely high combat power, but he also has a bad temper. The biggest shortcoming is that he is unruly and difficult to mobilize in the wild Jiazi tent. As long as Lu Cha wants to stay out of the battlefield, his status is as high as Zhomi. It's going to give you a bit of a headache. For example, when Fuyazu intercepted and killed Bai Yi, it was left to Lu Cha to make the final decision. At that time, Zhomi had to move out of Toyua Mountain to convince Lu Cha. Qin Qinglu asked, "But what about sleeping? Why don't you talk?" Lu Cha shook his head. "I'm not sure. Maybe I have a secret agreement with the great ancestor of Toyua Mountain." Qin Qinglu asked, "Are you afraid of offending Bai Zhe, who has been hiding behind closed doors, so you choose to go out and stand on the side of the Confucian temple? In a fit of anger, you go straight to the hinterland of the wilderness and have a head-on confrontation with Zhomi?" Lu Cha still shook his head. "I've never quite understood Master Bai's thoughts." Qin Qinglu sneered, "What's going on now, and you still call me Mr. Bai?" Lu Cha was too lazy to talk nonsense. Qin Qinglu suddenly laughed and said, "A pure sword cultivator of the 14th realm, the battlefield is not in the academy, but he was defeated by an ascension realm. He is worthy of Lu Cha, a real Lu Cha." Lu Cha said nothing with a dark face. Previously, a guy who was worse than a dog had already introduced the word Lu Cha in detail. Now he is very popular in the world, saying that he is so envious and should teach him. As for the other person who was almost virtuous, he didn't make any fuss about the topic, but he walked over and threw a stone into the water. Qin Qinglu sighed. It is a pity that Qin Xuanhuan, a pure scholar, is a role model for others and a model for the world. He is indeed a rare scholar who reminds Qin Qinglu of an old friend from his hometown. Qin Qinglu squinted at the empty fish basket and asked, "Do you really know how to fish?" Lu Cha said calmly, "On the mountain there are many magic weapons for mediocre people. This is called a master using a pole and a low hand setting up a street stall." Qin Qinglu said with a smile, "Lu Cha." Lu Cha said, "Don't come here again." Qin Qinglu said, "I will definitely not have time in the near future. I have to visit Qingming world." Lu Cha frowned and asked, "I have heard from friends about your many deeds. It seems that you and Lu Chen are old acquaintances?" Qin Qinglu nodded and gave the answer, "I want to say goodbye to this friend with whom I have a normal relationship. The reunited moon in the sky takes care of countless separated people in the world. Ever since there was a new bright moon that migrated from the wilderness, many officials, literati and poets in the world have become more interested in the elegant act of walking around the moon at night. When I look up, I see the bright and white jade plates reflecting each other, which is really a blessing to my eyes. If young hidden officials were mentioned before, they were mostly well-informed mountaintop Taoist officials. Because of Fei Xingcheng, Ning Yao or Chao Ci in the colorful world, Qin Pingan was mentioned incidentally. So now we gradually know the inside story of Mingyu's relocation. It was Qin Pingan who took the lead in the 2 feats of opening the mountain and moving the moon. Therefore now this young hermit official's reputation among Taoist officials in Qingming world is quite good. Especially the landscape spirits who worship the sun and the moon are very grateful for this. It is said that in some simple dojos and caves and secluded places in the countryside, the monsters who have successfully refined their bodies even have memorial tablets in their temples. They sincerely worship them every day, offer incense. The problem is that they only know the title of Xuanhuan from hearsay. There is no way to ask what the name of this swordsman is, so they have to temporarily replace it with Xuanhuan. In addition, although the process of refining the essence of the sun and moon by the Taoist officials of each channel has always been different from the internal and external, it is not impossible to refine the sun or the moon separately from the outside, but it is easy to go astray, so it is best to focus on the harmony of yin and yang. Therefore, an extra bright moon has some additional benefits. In the bright moon hanging high in the sky, there was a lean Taoist priest in a cotton robe, who habitually put his hands in his sleeves, crouched, squatting outside the door, and asked from the other side of the room, "Brother Jingjing, Master, who do you want to go out on the spur of the moment, to discuss matters with?" The young Taoist boy, carrying a huge gourd on his back, sat on the bench and had to keep an eye on the heat of the alchemy furnace. If he missed the time, the quality of the elixir would be ruined, and he would be unable to eat it. Junior brother Yuan Lu, Master only said that he wanted to go on a long trip, but now we have a lack of a guard boy to greet him and see him off, which is not a good idea. Wang Yuanlu muttered, "Poverty is important." Seeing that the tender-faced senior brother looked unhappy, Wang Yuanlu, who was as thin as a bamboo pole, had to change his words and said, "Senior brother Jingjing, it is rare to see someone as respectful as you are. No wonder Master will take you wherever he wants to go." "Where?" The young Taoist boy nodded. "Junior brother Yuanlu, even though you have now entered the Taoist order and have the title of personal successor, I think that Master will be closer to me in his heart." Wang Yuanlu hummed, "That's inevitable. Master misses the past." If the old Taoist priest was present, Wang Yuanlu and Sun Lanling, whose Taoist name was Jingjing, would not address each other as fellow disciples. There was no other way. The old Taoist priest only recognized Wang Yuanlu, who was from the lineage of rice thieves, as his direct descendant. Sun Lanling had always been a fire boy who took care of the alchemy furnace. He was happy to take advantage of the old temple master's absence at Wang Yuanlu's side. Take advantage of words. There was a young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown on his head. He walked in the wind, making noises and sipping a pot of tea to quench his thirst. The Taoist boy was not afraid of the same generation headmaster by Yu Jing-san. He said angrily, "Lu Sainer, are you here to beat the autumn wind again? Since Lu Chen wants to call his master Uncle Bixiao, aren't they the same generation? Besides, here I am half the host and Lu Chen as the guest, dares to do whatever he wants?" Headmaster Lu nodded and murmured, "Your Majesty is here and the flowers are shining brightly. Come and make a tooth sacrifice here. Go and we'll serve you with good wine and good meat." The Taoist boy was furious and just about to curse. He saw Lu Chen twisting his toes and turning around to leave. However, the old patron put his hand on his shoulder and said, "You just came and left, why don't you chat for a few words?" When Gu He saw the young Taoist boy, he was stunned for a moment, then became very sad and said in a trembling voice, "Fellow Taoist Jingjing." The old temple master looked calm, Wang Yuanlu was confused and the Taoist boy was confused. "Do we know each other?" Lu Chen looked at the Taoist friend he met again and asked in a low voice, "Have you congratulated my poor Taoist uncle Bixiao?" Gu He nodded. Lu Chen gave a thumbs up. "If you follow the path then you will be able to practice here. It will be safe." The Taoist boy asked doubtfully, "What congratulations are you saying?" Lu Chen said, "This fellow Taoist congratulates Master Bixiao for his promotion to the 15th realm." The Taoist boy was confused. "What the hell?" Wang Yuanlu gasped, put his hands in his sleeves and couldn't help but shrink his neck. Lu Chen changed the subject and said with a smile, "Friend Wei Chen, how do you feel about seeing the light of day again?" Although Gu knew something was wrong, he still managed to keep his composure and said, "On the road to immortality, we cannot bear to look back. Old friends will fade away like floating dust." The old spectator glanced at Lu Chen's Taoist heart. Taoist priests really want to clarify the world. What? Lu Chen shook his two large sleeves and asked with a smile. The fake 15th with a slight difference, does it count as the 15th state? The Taoist boy shook his head. It still doesn't count. Wang Yunlu said, of course it counts. Lu Chen smiled and stretched out his hand to hold down the Taoist boy's head, immobilizing him. The Taoist boy failed to break off Lu Chen's claws and asked strangely, Lu Chen, what are you doing? Lu Chen looked serious and said, I have to do two things. The Taoist boy asked, who should I fight with? Lu Chen looked shocked and said, what kind of brain do you have, you can guess all this? The Taoist boy struck the back of Lu Chen's hand with lightning speed. Lu Chen immediately retracted his hand, and there was a dull sound. The Taoist punched his head so hard that his eyes glowed with gold. Lu Chen rubbed the young Taoist boy's head and said with a joking smile, you are really willing to do something harsh. Are you enlightened? The old temple leader waved his hand to signal them to stop messing around, and took Lu Chen for a walk towards the door of the Taoist temple. Always fulfill the duties of headmaster by Yujing. In order to prevent King Ming's world from becoming chaotic and uncontrollable, help senior brother Yudo solve his worries. We must be the first to arrive quickly, clear a path for senior brother Ko Ming, who does not know exactly when to return home, and eliminate hidden dangers. Bai Yujing and Lu Chen bid farewell to their uncle. Lu Chen stopped, bowed his head politely and said in 2 words, Taoist Lu Chen bids farewell to fellow Taoist Bixiao. The Taoist boy who saw this scene from a distance became increasingly puzzled. Is the sun coming out in the west? Does Lu Chen know etiquette? The old temple master hesitated to speak, but finally nodded and asked in his heart, where is Luo Shanzhu Lian, don't you care about him? Lu Chen said with a smile, if you are born you will die and if you die you will live again. Why do you care about the status of host and guest? In this world, first come, then arrive, we are all returning guests. To accomplish this, Lu Chen must be the first to reach the pseudo-15th realm in the new world after the founders of the 3 religions dispersed. After all, one needs to counteract a false 15 with a false 15. In the world of Qingming, above the earth, on the boundary of old Kaizhou, the alien demon wandering around looked like a formidable enemy. It suddenly raised its head and looked at the bright moon. For the first time it felt great fear. It started to run away without hesitation. The Taoist priest went to the human world under the bright moon. In this wild and foreign land, with the road barely visible beneath his feet, Lu Kai asked, have you met many strange people and strangers while following Mr. Zhou? Lu Kai nodded and said, I've seen a lot of them, and the one who impressed me the most was a scholar who couldn't tell the difference between his level and his level. Lu Kai asked curiously, this person fought with Mr. Zhou? How was the outcome? Lu Kai shook his head. Li Shixing once found Zhou Zi in an ordinary market. At that time Lu Kai was wandering around the world with Zhou Zi. I am looking for Zhou Zi because of my sister Li Baoping. After that, Li Baoping no longer had to wear red clothes. What Zhou Zi did back then was a kind of protection for Li Baoping. On the other hand, Cui Chan and Dali had plotted against Li Shixing. However, Cui Chan's plan was an upright conspiracy. Since you, the great master of Bai Yujing, Ko Ming, want to use one qi to transform the 3 pure things, you have the roots of the 3 religions so as to try to integrate the 3 religions. So in the history of Howren, there have been many divisions and mergers of etiquette and metaphysics, which involve the reconciliation of religion and nature, the conflict between group rules and self-consciousness, and a series of arguments about the love and ruthlessness of the saints. Yu Li Shixing as a disciple of Confucianism, I can never bypass the 2 words of propriety of a family and love of relatives. Whether to give up or establish, abandon or forget, it doesn't matter who you lie to, you can never lie to your own true heart. Don't even think about getting away with it. A gentleman can deceive others. Tit for tat. Pei Min asked, has Qin Pingan noticed something? Zhou Zi said, absolutely. Pei Min looked strange and turned to look at his old friend. Zhou Zi smiled and said, why should bystanders be so anxious to know the truth? Qin Pingan has been looking for clues about swordsman Lu Kai over the years, but he never expected that this guy was in Panshui County. He made money by helping people copy the Sheeping Stone scripture, so he rented a bookstore and made a living selling books. I usually go fishing in Yuanyangzu when I have free time. Therefore, the last time Qin Pingan attended the meeting at the Zhongtu Confucian Temple, he was actually very close to Lu Kai. Qin Pingan had long suspected that the last piece of natal porcelain fell into the hands of Tianhuan or Zhou Zi. Now it can be confirmed that Tianhuan did not hide the porcelain pieces secretly. Since Zhou Zi is determined to use his sword to practice Lu Kai's method of defeating him, targeting himself at every turn and putting himself in his shoes, Qin Pingan can deduce one thing simply by assuming that he is Zhou Zi. Not only was the piece in Zhou Zi's hands, it was also refined by Zhou Zi and used as a weapon to win or lose. Therefore, Qin Pingan must try to find Zhou Zi and Lu Kai before the sword cultivator sees Lu Tai and Yang Xin returns to his position, like integrating the Tao. It is better to hurt the foundation of Lu Tai's road than to be close friends in the past and have to fight each other and fight to the death. Even if he takes the lead, the chance is definitely slim, but he can't just do nothing and let Zhou Zi steadily lay out a new situation. Lu Xianyang taught Qin Pingan the swordsmanship. Several monks from the Wild Demon clan, including Tongyi's Hao Qingyang, were careful enough to chat without even mentioning the name Qin Pingan, but they still kept talking. Before Lu Kai followed Jianxiu Yuanbai into Xingyang Mountain and settled on Xiefeng, she must have used a blindfold to cover up her true appearance. The effectiveness of Qin Pingan's swordsmanship has been greatly reduced, but it cannot be said that there is no chance. It is a pity that Yuren is sleepy. It turns out that real people have no dreams. Unless Qin Pingan is boasting, how many of the opponents he has encountered in this life are fuel efficient? I really am not afraid of encountering so-called powerful enemies. After all, I have seen some things in the world. Just be afraid. This is an unavoidable and inescapable question of swordsmanship. Zhou Zi's carefully planned plan does not have to be about swordsmanship. Just keep it in mind. For example, Qin Pingan has passed the big pass of ascension, and if he wants to take another step forward, try to combine the Tao, and reach the 14th realm of mystery and mystery, he must retrieve all the pieces of his natal porcelain and complete his soul without any flaws. Are you afraid that sword cultivator Lu Kai is not only Lu Tai's yang god body, but also refined and shaped by Qin Pingan's piece of porcelain, and has already merged with his soul? Killing Lu Kai is equivalent to killing Lu Tai. Should he kill him or not? If Lu Tai did not want Qin Pingan to be in trouble and chose to give way, then Lu Tai would have to retreat on his own. But the question is, by doing this, did Lu Tai really help Qin Pingan? When it comes to harmony, we must first find an unprecedented avenue, and it is said that there is also a hurdle to pass. The easy ones are very easy and the sad ones are extremely sad. For another example, Zhou Zi has more arrangements. Killing only one person can benefit the world. Will you, Qin Pingan, kill him? On the way to study in the past, the young man wore straw sandals, gritted his teeth, and pursued perfection with all his heart. In the same life encounters, there are many people who get by, make mistakes and break things. There are so many of them. He feels that there are too many wrong things in this world and someone needs to admit, correct, and improve them. The young man has a simple heart and has always protected himself very well in a difficult life, which is extremely difficult. Mistakenly thinking that being error-free is just the beginning, but not knowing that being error-free is the end. The gods in heaven, who are both high and wise, are limited by their own position and dare not say that they are truly infallible. To protect children like Li Baoping and Li Huai, we must be willing to work hard without complaining, watch and think more along the way, and strive to make sure there are no mistakes in all aspects. If you want to see the girl you like, just go. I had to travel all over the world for my respected Mr. Qi, so I just looked around while walking. Is this what Lu Qin calls a Daozuan sighting? Pei Min sighed. He is free. Mr. Zhou, do you think so? After a moment of pause, Pei Min said, I envy this kind of person. Zhou Zi said, fine, I can't say I'm envious. Lu Tai almost blurted out when he heard this. He wanted to scold Mr. Pei for farting like your mother. However, Lu Tai knew the tempers of the two preachers, and his messing around was meaningless. It would only make this reunion more meaningless and meaningless. The real reason is that Pei Min's words, the word freedom, can be said to know Qin Pingan's true intentions best. The expectations and visions given to him by others, whether big or small, are exactly what he has longed for since childhood. As long as a person can still feel that he is given hope by others, he will not be alone or completely desperate. So he almost never complained to anyone. Lu Tai on the side clenched his hiking stick in his hand. But Qin Pingan's self-awareness is too thin. Note 3, this may be the biggest hurdle for him to pass the Ascension realm and reach the 14th realm in the future. How can a person who has loved self-denial since childhood truly be able to go his own way? Lu Tai, let's meet you here. Zhou Zi said slowly, then wait until he eats something and then come back to me here. Meet on the road. Note 1. Chapter 709 by Yun sends Lu Shirlu back to Mountain. Note 2. Chapter 189, 2 or 3 things about swords outside the Mingzi Tower. Note 3. Comments from readers. Sword of Coming. Chapter 1146. As long as there is a dispute over the road, a battle of life and death, it will be like two armies confronting each other, with arrows on the strings having to be fired, and there will be no room for surrender without a fight or to make way for a detour. When Xianxia pulled out the formation-breaking spear, Qin Pingan immediately took out a sword fairy banner that had been obtained from Liz Hen in the past and stabbed it heavily on the ground. The sword Immortal Banzi, who had been refined into his natal creature not long ago, had only dared to be refined before, and was placed on the top of the mountain temple, made of 5-color soil by Qin Pingan. However, now a separate natal cave has been opened for him. Only from that banner a total of 18 sword immortals with silver eyes and ethereal figures floated out from them. The robes they wore were all made of refined talismans. Jiangxi's burly figure turned into a rainbow light, and on the ground the formation-breaking spear brought out arcs of fireflies. The sword fairies in the way were as brittle as pieces of paper, and they didn't even have a chance to draw their swords. Every time the spear came into contact with the sword immortal's figure, it was like snowballs splashing out. Jiangxia arrived in front of Qin Pingan in an instant and saw the pair of golden eyes. What an abomination! Qin Pingan's mind moved slightly, and he tried to take back the sword immortal banner, but was shot by Jiangxia to shatter the consciousness. Jiangxia twitched the corner of his mouth, stretched out his hand to hold the temporarily ownerless sword immortal banner, and casually broke it. There was a muffled thunderous sound inside Qin Pingan's body, who had shrunk to the distance. A sword fairy banner that was carefully refined and carved with thousands of talismans as inscriptions, together with a natal cave, were now invalid. Jiangxia knew that this kid still had many great refining natal items hidden in his body. Ordinary monks would never dare to pursue the quantity of natal objects at will. If all fights can be won by quantity and magic, who among the monks who have lived for thousands of years is not the owner of hundreds of natal objects? However, what Qin Pingan did was right. As a halfie, he has a good innate foundation, a hungry stomach, and is not afraid of overstuffing. If he is given another 200 to 300 years of cultivation, he can open up more than 1,000 chi palaces in that human body. And then use the great refining natal objects to sit in them, and when they are enlightened and ascended, they may all think that the power of the heavenly tribulation is not enough. It can also be regarded as a brilliant method that has never been seen before or since. It's a pity that we met on. Jiangxia shook his head and reminded, "Is this kind of random object worthy of testing the depth of my Tao power? I advise you not to use it to embarrass me. Why don't you use your real trump card?" As he spoke, Jiangxia was unstoppable. Breaking the formation, he aimed a gun directly at Qin Pingan's chest. Qin Pingan did not retreat but advanced, striding forward, letting the spear pierce his chest. With a twist of his wrist, his right hand instantly held up a thunderstorm formed by stacked formations, intertwined with lightning like a dragon. The snake swam away. The lay sacrifice bureau was like a fist, slamming into the door in front of Jiangxi's face. He pressed it hard, and the entire lay bureau collided with Jiangxi's strong true energy and turned into powder in an instant. Jiangxi's head swayed back and he retreated with his gun. Long the gun did not forget to twist, and a huge hole was created in Qin Pingan's chest. After taking 10 steps back, Jiangxia stood still. It is worthy of a pure and pure divine body, with the realm of cloud water body and water essence. The wounds on the front of the body healed as before at a speed visible to the naked eye. 2 daggers slipped out of his sleeves and Qin Pingan gently held them. A Caozi dagger with an inscription on it, but its real name is Zhuelu. The other one, inscribed with wuxia, was named Cutting Deer by Qin Pingan. Just barely dodging Jiangxi's shot at the neck, Qin Pingan held a dagger and got closer. A dazzling Big Dipper formation appeared out of thin air on the ground. Jiangxia was slightly surprised, but the second shot still missed. Splitting the guy open from head to toe, it turned out that Qin Pingan used some secret method to be able to hand out the daggers at the same time as Yaoguang and Yuheng. They were both real daggers and stabbed the temples on one side of Jiangxi's head. At the same time, the stars are quietly changing. Where Jiangxia was standing happened to be near the Kaiyang star. Jiangxia smiled. He couldn't shrink quickly enough, so he had to rely on these fancy tricks to make up for his disadvantage. Even with the aid of formation diagrams and Taoist priest Bugang's magical power, his figure is still so slow. If you don't help people, it will still be a fool's errand if you take advantage of the right time and place. Jiangxi was too lazy to move his throne. He just turned his head slightly to avoid one of the wuxia daggers, and then raised his hand to hit the dagger with the morning dew inscription on it with the palm of his hand. It was a Caozi dagger with a long history in legendary stories. On this it collapsed inch by inch and shattered like jade fragments. He stretched out his hand again, grabbed Qin Pingan's face with 5 fingers and fought back. He also twisted his wrist and knocked Qin Pingan to the ground. The ground shook violently, Qin Pingan sunk into a pit, and there were countless cracks around him. Jiangxi raised his foot and stepped the guy's heart. Qin Pingan's figure turned into 18 rays of sword light and dispersed instantly, condensing his figure in the distance. Jiangxi seemed to disdain to pursue him. He just raised his spear at an angle and pointed at the tip of the spear, and a majestic Tao power condensed like an arrow and shot through the air. Qin Pingan's figure exploded again, and a hole the size of a bowl appeared in his abdomen, a veritable, empty stomach. The healing speed of the wound this time has obviously slowed down. Slow. Qin Pingan's face was expressionless, but there was a look of confusion in his eyes. Can Jiangxi be so fast? It should be noted that after Jiangxi pulled out his spear to break the formation, he has not yet used any military magical power, nor has he used any immortal magic. In other words, Jiangxi has always been fighting the enemy with his body as a warrior. Furthermore, at this battlefield site, the Way of Heaven was already superior to Jiangxi, the ancestor of the military strategist who was the first to wield a god. The sword cultivator's natal flying sword is already a special case that has been least affected by the long river of time. This is why it is said that one sword can break all methods. Ginger, since she doesn't have his natal magical powers and is in the small world of a military strategist, how can he completely ignore the obstruction of the long river of time? The most important thing is that Qin Pingan has already sacrificed his natal flying sword, the bird in the cage, so Qin Pingan is sitting in the small world and moves like a boat with the wind and the current. Jiangxi here seems to be in an invisible frozen glaze realm. Body shape, not only was it a retrograde ship, it was also hindering the flow of his soul and spiritual energy within his body. Damn, he deserves to be Jiangxi, he is really strong. Jiangxi, who has not yet returned to his peak, is already so strong. What about Dao Ancestor, who had the upper hand 10,000 years ago? No wonder Bai Jinghui reminded him in his heart that when the two armies faced each other before, the generals of both sides fought against each other in front of the formation just like in the romance of later generations. Daozu was entangled by Jiangxi and they both got really angry. Jiangxi walked forward slowly and said with a smile, "Ascending realms don't know the magnificence of the scenery of the 14th realms, and it's even harder for warriors at the end of the realm to know the weight of the 11th realm of martial arts." The sky and the earth suddenly became dark, like dark clouds covering the sun. Jiangxi looked up a little and saw a white jade Ganoderma lucidum as big as a mountain, which was photographed towards him. Jiangxi just glanced sideways, kept walking, opened his fist and casually punched out, breaking the Yuji easily. Then there was a majestic rainstorm the color of white jade, splashing on the earth wantonly. Didn't the sword holder tell you that all the Qi practitioners who have sought immortality since ancient times are no exceptions? They are all water drinkers and water thieves in a long river. Jiang Shedi rushed to slow down. Another strange phenomenon appeared on the side, a flying sword shaped like a river on the earth, rushing towards it with great momentum, like breaking its embankment. The water of the river containing the surging sword energy was like hitting a mainstay, stirring up thousands of meters of water mist. After a moment, Jiangxi walked out of the flying sword water curtain that concealed the meaning of the word blasphemy, unscathed except for his body. In the vast expanse of land in front, a huge turquoise lake appeared with vast water waves. Hope is endless. Jiangxi saw through the trick at a glance. They were all imitation small worlds made from swords. After the refinement, he could do whatever he wanted and let the master change his shape to blind his eyes. The root of the two swords is actually the Dragon Qiu of Qin Pingan Water Mansion. The two dragon daggers inside are respectively engraved with the characters Du and Hu. There are thousands of so-called caves and dojos in the world. Which one does not live by water? Who of the so-called monks is not maggots clustered on the corpses of gods? We martial artists do not have this drawback. Jiangxi leisurely walked on the water, and every step he stepped on the lake surface, which was like a green glass mirror, forcibly suppressed the sword intent under the water surface, preventing it from raising its head like a dragon. There was another pocket flying sword that was disproportionate to Jiang and Dus, hidden in the air, and it sneaked up quietly and insidiously, but it was still only knocked away by Jiangxi's shot. If it weren't for the flying sword being stained with some demonic aura, Jiangxi might have had to wait much later to detect the traces of the water curtain that had dispersed and still had lingering sounds. It turned out to be the natal flying sword Tianlai, of the demon sword cultivator of the Xingrong sect. The flying sword just now was hit by the tip of the spear, causing a burst of sparks and turning into ashes on the way. This is the power of the spear to break the formation. As long as the grade of the thing being refined is not high enough, it will break if touched even slightly. It's a pity for him again. If he were to face an ordinary Ascension Realm monk, with these messy spells and magical powers, would an immortal have a chance to gain the upper hand against an Ascension Realm? In an instant, above Jiangxi's head, the daytime scene turned into night, the starry sky was bright, and a picture of 28 constellations with profound Taoist meaning appeared. Jiangxi looked at it intently and took a closer look. It seemed that a physical refining was used as the center of the formation, and 28 talismans made of good material were used to draw a lifelike painted statue of the 28 constellations. Jiangxi looked familiar and remembered that it turned out to be the Jincheng Jade Emperor Temple in Qingming Xianxia's ancient Zizhou. It was as if Chen Pingan had invited the gods to move them here, and the gods returned to their respective places in the stars in the sky. What's a little weird is that there are still sun and moon outside the star map. The signs on the same day are, after all, somewhat pieced together. The star chart array above his head was just circulating on its own, always ready to go, and showed no sign of attack, so Jiangxi ignored it for the time being. Is it the showmanship that scares people, or is it the trump card that Chen Pingan thinks is the key to victory or defeat? It cannot be just a decoration that wastes spiritual energy. It will be known as soon as it lands. The real owner who spends money is not in a hurry, and Jiangxi, who is just watching the excitement, will only be more patient. It's a pity that you are unable to practice martial arts and swordsmanship, and you are not even pure, which is pitiful. On the contrary, your own divinity, which you regard as the enemy of the Great Road, is the only one who has a chance to be pure, which is even more pitiful. There was a large lake blocking the road ahead. Jiangxi didn't even bother to take a detour and walked straight into it. He stepped on the soft green mirror surface with one step. The sword energy that filled the lake was forcibly suppressed. As arrogant as Jiangxi was, he couldn't help but admire in his heart that Chen Pingan, a young man of only a certain age, could actually accumulate so much wealth. What to eat, martial arts, spiritual energy, magical weapons, gold and copper coins, dragon-slaying platform, etc. Everything is eating a bowl of decapitated rice, and the result is to make wedding clothes for divinity. Listen to my advice, you can't shut it down. The outcome of this tug-of-war has already been determined. It's useless to struggle. It's better to admit defeat and lose half of it. Being able to fully stretch your divinity is not a kind of freedom. A fight is a fight, fellow Taoists, don't make noises. At some point, Chen Pingan was dressed as a Taoist priest, wearing a lotus crown and a green gauze Taoist robe. He held a snow-white whisk in his left hand and a pocket-sized imitation white jade pagoda in his right hand. The Tao Chi all over the body is as thick as substance, with a dazzling yellow-purple brilliance, and behind him are the two halos of the sun and the moon. When he finally spoke, he made fun of Jiangxi. On the imitation object hanging in the air in the palm of Taoist priest Chen Pingan's hand, there is a white jade capital, 5 cities and the 12th floor, each with wisps of slender treasure light flowing, and green book secrets with bursts of Taoist charm. Jiangxi laughed angrily when he heard this. In his field of vision, there was a green-glazed pavilion in the middle of the lake. A swordsman in white clothes who looked like he was cooking wine to entertain guests came out. He raised his sword and walked out of the pavilion. He said with a heroic smile, "This man is very skilled. Tell me your name and come with me after drinking. It's your turn to go up the mountain to gather together." Jiangxi felt baffled, and without saying a word, he swept forward, raised his gun, and shattered the illusion of the swordsman blocking the road on the spot. It was said to be an illusion, but in Jiangxi's opinion, if he were an ordinary master of martial arts and martial arts, he would have to spend countless efforts to defeat him. Jiangxi quickly figured out the connection and said disapprovingly, "The 11th level warrior who is just imagined out of thin air cannot be used for much purpose." Taoist priest Chen Pingan smiled and said, "You talk too much and you lose your masterly demeanor in vain. Taoist friends, if you learn from me, you will understand the truth of preserving your spirit early on." Waving his fly whisk in Jiangxi's direction, the Taoist said, "You are a tyrannical person and a disobedient person. How dare you show off your cruelty? Just accept your death." Jiangxi couldn't help but laugh. If throwing a fist at him was a sign of acknowledging one's ancestors, Then by using this magical power of Yin soldiers to cross the border, are you determined to change your surname to Jiang? I saw troops arrayed on the lake. It was roughly estimated that there were hundreds of thousands of Yin soldiers and ghosts, each forming a formation and setting up large banners. Some of them were leading generals, wearing armor and holding troops, or sitting in military tents. For a time the Yin soldiers on the lake were in jingling armor, their horses' hooves were in formation, and their drums were beating like thunder, soaring into the sky. The killing energy condensed one after another, forming thick black clouds in the sky. On each sea of clouds floating in the sky like ink, there are still divine warriors wearing precious armor gathering like locusts and ants. Regardless of its number, Jiang Shedi walked straight into the pavilion without any suspicion at all. He drank the pot of boiling warm wine in one gulp, wiped his mouth and nodded, "Good wine." After throwing away the wine bottle and walking out of the pavilion, Xianxia said calmly, "Zhan." If Xianxia broke the formation with a gun before, it was the martial arts method that defeated the 10 martial arts with one force. Then this moment was a veritable act of utterance. The words Xuanhuan were like thunder rolling across the sky and the earth. The Yin soldiers on the lake and the divine generals in the clouds, among the millions, did not escape the net. They were all cut into pieces in an instant. Thick smoke was billowing from heaven to earth and wailing was everywhere. If you listened carefully, it seemed that countless women were wailing and sobbing one after another. Jiangxia turned a deaf ear. How could the soldiers care about the dust blown away by the wind? If you don't have a heart of stone to fight, your Taoist heart will be overwhelmed long ago. Fellow Taoist, please stop and take some time to read. The Taoist priest shook his sleeves and unfolded a long scroll of history. Everywhere there were fresh battlefields of fighting or lifeless ancient battlefield sites. After manifesting a book of war, Qin Pingan gently threw the fly whisk in his hand towards Jiangxia. A handful of whisks suddenly spread out and turned into countless long lines of cause and effect, actively wrapping around the hidden body of the ancestor of the military strategist. There are thousands of ghosts and dead souls on every rope. Jiangxia frowned slightly, his face no longer so confident, and said, "Even evil heretics who are not popular can dare to hope to corrode the golden body." The Dharma statue standing behind him immediately showed signs of shattering the golden threads. Is Jiangxia not a heretic? At the same time, Taoist priest Qin Pingan also put his fingers together, held the seal in front of him, uttered the truth and said with a smile, "I must destroy it so that I can do justice for heaven." Jiangxia's shoulders moved slightly, but a golden statue behind him shone brightly. The threads were washed away by the golden light as thick as water, and soon turned into bursts of broken ashes, fluttering to the ground. Qin Pingan looked indifferent, watching this scene from a distance, not too surprised. The military monk is indeed one of the chi practitioners who least cares about cause and effect. Perhaps he was really annoyed by Qin Pingan's series of tactics. Jiangxia once again thrust the spear in his hand into the ground beside him, and made a simple twisting gesture with his palms facing each other. All the scholars of all schools of thought have differences in the left-handed and right-handed ways of heaven. But for Jiangxia this kind of scholarship is really boring. I can do whatever I want the avenue to do. The sky and the earth are tilted just like the grinding of a millstone, unstoppable. All living beings and all things in it are turned into powder, reduced to ashes, scattered like flying dust. Sure enough, the entire scroll in front of Jiangxia was easily torn into pieces in an instant, and the lake under his feet disappeared. Not only that, the entire world was distorted in a way that was visible to the naked eye. Throwing out the long scroll and whisk and uttering the big words, "Do justice for heaven," Taoist priest Qin Pingan watched with narrowed eyes. The basic cave where the 5 elements natal objects are located, plus the caves where 10 princes' mountains are found as assistants, 1 master and 2 slaves, totaling 15 natal acupoints. This means that Qin Pingan has already practiced 10 additional natal objects during the retreat at Fiolu Dojo. This is far from the true total. However, he was blocked a lot by the sneaky 14th realm whose identity is still unknown and made several sneak attacks. As a result, Qin Pingan had to withdraw from the retreat again and again, wasting too much time. The refining of the natal objects was a bit hasty, as many key treasures were missing, or they were not refined to a perfect level, resulting in the overall effect not meeting expectations. Qin Pingan originally thought that this obstacle had nothing to do with the overall situation, but he never thought that within a few days he would confront Jiangxia. Qin Pingan's previous idea couldn't be simpler. In addition to refining swords, eating gold and copper coins, and looking for dragon-slaying stones, my homework in the immortal realm was to continuously improve the quality of my two natal flying swords. In addition, I could only consolidate my Dao foundation and increase my Dao power. You only need to refine the magic weapon to achieve multiple things with one stone. Such as those in the marketplace who have no skills at all and beat the old master to death with random punches. In the mountain fighting, victory is directly based on numbers, and the opponent is smashed to death with magic weapons. A simple idea, but it requires extremely complex and cumbersome steps to implement. What you want in the end is, of course, a unique way to ascend to immortality. That's why I preached, protected, observed and enlightened Taoist Ding. Taoist priest Qin Pingan raised his head to see the sky. The barrier of Qingtian Avenue is like a wall, the sun and moon are on the same wall, it is impossible to tell, and it has trapped so many Taoist heroes from the past and present. The true form of the star map in the sky is an ancient inkstone with the sun and moon engraved on the same wall. The back of the inkstone has the eye pillars of the 28 stars. Obtained from Zheng, used to hold hundreds of gold and copper coins. In the Battle of Tianwai, Qin Pingan, who was at the lowest level, was responsible for sitting in the center and controlling the operation of the abbot's formation. He got this close-by object that was not clearly stated whether it needed to be returned. During Qin Pingan's retreat he suddenly had an idea. With the help of a floating cloud boat Qin Pingan actually succeeded in refining the object refining method taught by Gu Ken, who was able to successfully refine it into a small cave. It proved that this method was feasible, and it was worthy of being called a magical power. As for the technique of drawing the talisman, it has the simplicity of ancient Taoist priests, which is enough to make many ancient Taoist priests mistake it for the handwriting of an ancient Taoist priest. Because the book, Ghost Painting Talismans, lent to him by Li Huai recorded the fundamental method of holding a ji and inviting gods to descend. The many imitation swords that were given to Yuan Lingyan of Zhishuan Peak and entrusted to Lu Jinglong to buy from Henjian Mountain in Luzhou, Beiju, have all been refined one by one. Regardless of your rank, whether it is a spiritual weapon, a magic weapon, or a semi-immortal weapon, whether you bought it with money or picked it up on the roadside, whatever you have on hand counts as the same. Qin Pingan is a natal object connected to the Tao through great refinement. Used to fill various air palaces. Under the blue sky avenue where the sun and the moon are on the same wall, they are fighting here, each showing his ability. You Jiangxi are as strong as a broken bamboo. It seems that you are in a no man's land in the long river of time. Even if you reverse the yin and yang, control the heaven and earth as a millstone, everything will be fine. It's Jiangxi's own fault. Accept it yourself and grind the ink, together with Tao, Xing and magical powers. After all, it is a conflict between the two sides. Qin Pingan held up an imitation white jade capital in his hand, and in the central and southern huaching of the white jade capital, there was a young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown. In his hand, he held a 6-man seal with the heavenly payment, Lu Chen's order, on it. On the seal, 36 ancient gods the spirits opened their eyes at the same time. The scene changed. The young Taoist priest seemed to have sacrificed a huge Dharma image, with his big sleeves fluttering, floating out of Nanhua City. His height was not inferior to Jiangxi's golden body, but Qin Pingan's figure condensed to the size of a mustard seed, hiding away from the tallest figure in Bai Yujing. Bai Yujing collided with Jiangxi's rotating millstone of the great avenue of heaven and earth, making a soul-stirring creaking sound, like an awl slowly carving the surface of a glass mirror. After a while, the white jade capital seemed to block the rotation of the millstone, so that the whole world began to shake with a subtle amplitude. Qin Pingan held his sleeves with his hands, and his figure in the green robe swayed with the 12th floor of the 5 cities under his feet. Jiangxi picked up the broken formation again, gently twisted his wrist and rotated the spear. Changing his mind temporarily, Jiangxi was not in a hurry to destroy the fake Bai Yujing. Just because Jiangxi saw through Qin Pingan's plan immediately, he didn't let this guy get what he wanted. The opponent is within Bai Yujing. If Jiangxi grabs and breaks the formation, it will be an excellent opportunity for Qin Pingan, who will ask Bai Yujing to attack in the future, so that he can use rocks from other mountains to attack. Jade. It can be seen that Jiangxi is not completely sure of killing me on the spot today. The Taoist priest laughed endlessly and said to himself, if he thinks he is sure of victory, why should Jiangxi care about the gains and losses? Or is he afraid that I will learn the general route and detailed tips for defeating Bai Yujing? Jiangxi rubbed his chin and finally understood the thoughts of some Qi practitioners. A martial artist's bad mouth is indeed annoying. Do you like to sit on the sidelines so much, watching me play monkey tricks one by one? Jiangxi seemed to have finally lost his patience. Everyone, if you don't show up, your Taoist companions, mountain masters and allies will really be killed by me. Beaten to death. Controlling the avenue, he easily turned his back on guests, temporarily trapping the imitation white jade capital and divine Chen Pingan. Jiangxi's figure fell back and merged into the Dharma image behind him. The Dharma image stretched out his hand and grabbed a spear. He took a few steps and came to the young Taoist priest. He swept across the gun and hit the man. The chest of respecting the Taoist priest Dharma is stirred up. There were countless jade fragments, and the Taoist priest staggered back. Bai Yujing, who was higher than others, then moved back. Jiangxi stabbed the Taoist priest in the heart with another spear, and Bai Yujing lit up countless rays of light, condensing on the spot where the Taoist priest's appearance and the tip of the spear were in contact. Jiangxi did not withdraw his spear and took a step forward, causing the Taoist priest and Bai Yujing to slide back together. Jiangxi looked around and sneered, "Doesn't it look good to have a big stone broken on the chest like this? The spectators don't have to pay, but there are only a few cheers? Fellow Taoist Jiang, please be patient." Inside Bai Yujing, Chen Pingan stood leaning against the railing. He put his sleeves on and looked up at the image of Jiang Sheti snatching the Dharma. He smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, please be kind and don't hurt your harmony." Even though Dao Shidao was as tough as Jiangxi, he was so angry at this nonsense. Jiangxi put more force on his hand, and the tip of the spear that broke through the formation penetrated the white jade capital. A martial artist asks about boxing, and a monk fights with martial arts, which always consumes physical energy, blood, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Any damage to any of the Qi practitioner's great refining objects can be said to have damaged the foundation of the Tao. This is more hidden danger than the loss of Taoist power that has taken away decades or centuries of Taoism. Such gaps in the Taoism will lead to endless troubles, just like the practitioners in the world who have fallen into the root of the disease. As for the consequences of harming the soul, dispersing the mind, and reducing merit, who is not a Taoist who is easily reduced to the inner demon dojo, and is the obstacle to the future of joining the Tao? The higher the level of a monk, the seemingly inconspicuous and pinhole-sized flaws in the past will turn into something bigger than a hole in the sky. The Qi practitioners think that when their realm is high, they can then use foreign objects to mend the deficiencies in their Taoist heart. There is no perfect way for people to do it, so they can just mend the sky. How many natal objects closely related to the road of life have been broken by Chen Pingan today? Jiangxi seemed to have some realization. Could this guy be trying to do the opposite? Although Chen Pingan has many identities and methods, there are actually more hidden dangers. For example, without the yin and yang gods, he is destined to be unable to refine his natal character, and the swordsman and martial artist are not pure. Let's first assume that his human soul must have someone. These gaps cannot be repaired, so we simply engage in a battlefield performance that is similar to dispersing Taoism. For those who practice Taoism, all Dharma is empty, and their bodies are empty to nourish their souls. Be ruthless and give up everything. Don't want any external possessions. Only a clear Taoist heart is left? Good guy. How does the phrase, "in order to learn and become more and more destructive day by day," is the same as, "the way of heaven has depleted more than enough, but it is not enough to serve"? How can we explain the exegesis in this way? What a wonderful idea indeed. Jiangxi's previous comment that Xu Zi became famous actually offended this young mountain master who was both a sword cultivator, a martial artist, and a talisman cultivator. It's not in vain that I went everywhere to ask for information about you, so as not to capsize in the gutter. The first fight after coming out of the mountain was in trouble and was laughed at by the temple of old friends in Bixiao. During today's confrontation there were some surprises, but in the end there were too many disappointments. Is it possible that a young man with half a body only has this kind of moral character? So far, what's the point of not being able to fight back? The two dermas are very close to each other. Jiangxi was about to shoot Bai Yujing and the Taoist priest through the chest. At this moment, the Taoist priest holding a 5-thunder seal in his hand smashed the seal towards Jiangxi with lightning speed. Jiangxi's punch failed to break it but just knocked it away and the seal rolled to the ground. Hitting people with the magic seal seems reckless and has nothing to do with immortality, but it uses the fist power of beating a drum. Jiangxi was confused in his heart and said with a sneer, "The thunder is louder and the raindrops are smaller. You put all your efforts into planning, but in the end you prepared such a killing move?" Chen Pingan frowned slightly, puzzled as to why this 5-thunder seal lost most of its effectiveness in an instant, and the transformation took almost only an instant. This resulted in many backup moves being unable to be used. It is not false to say that Xianxia was severely damaged by this seal alone, but this 5 Thunder Seal was the starting point for several real killers after Qin Pingan. Therefore, not to mention that Qin Pingan was surprised by this move, even Xianxia mistakenly thought that Qin Pingan was playing some trick. On the top of the leaning pillar, Qin Pingan in green shirt, who allowed his divinity to become the enemy of Xianxia, stepped forward for the first time to help save the siege. He took out a simple big bow and drew it like a full moon. There was a string but no arrows. With a bang, a golden light shot out, pulling out an extremely long shining thread, like a sword leaning against the sky. Xianxia drew out his spear, pressed the tip of the spear against the menacing sword light, and smashed an arrow into pieces. Does Mudlegs also have mysophobia? Xianxia had a sarcastic look on his face. Or do you mean you simply don't dare to let the divinity hold a sword? Putting away the long bow obtained from the night sailing ship, Qin Pingan opened his palm, which was as clear as mutton fat and jade, and a jasper dagger no more than an inch long emerged from his palm. This sword embryo, obtained from Dues Weishan, was named Xiaofengdu in ancient times. The 2 flying swords of Chuyi and 15 have been obtained for a long time, but they are one of the very few that Qin Pingan has not been able to refine. Qin Pingan remained silent. This seemed to be Qin Pingan's first time fighting against someone. The spiritual energy accumulated in each cave was exhausted to the point where nothing was left. Those who practice Taoism need to spend money to fight with others and discuss questions. Control each of the natal treasures that have been refined to attack or defend, and deploy troops and generals. But the result was either broken by a blow from Xianxia, or stabbed by the tip of a spear. Although it did not collapse on the spot, it became dilapidated and its rank fell. Although Qin Pingan was recruited to become a young man during the battle outside the world, it was a worthwhile trip and was of great benefit to Taoism. He only witnessed the collision course of the 2 worlds with his own eyes. Qin Pingan began to try to survive in the human body at the Fiyola Dojo. World inside, a traceable green path is laid out. Pave roads and build bridges. Pursue a state where every time you draw your sword, it will be like the way of heaven. As for the choice of taking the opportunity to unite all the natal things, it was really a last resort for Xianxia. The reason couldn't be simpler. If you don't act like this, there will be no fight at all. Not to mention the confrontation, any delay is a luxury, let alone getting to the bottom of things and trying to see the depth of Jiangxi's cultivation. Qin Pingan, the avatar in green shirt at the top of the mountain, smiled and said, "Look, something went wrong. I guess there is a big situation in Qingming Tianxia." He collected the Dharma and took back the imitation white jade that regained its compact appearance. Holding it in the palm of his hand, Qin Pingan listened intently and heard the subtle sound like the opening of pieces of porcelain in his hometown, ding ding dong dong, and finally fell apart. A pocket-sized imitation white jade. The capital collapsed suddenly, and a strong wind blew between heaven and earth, stirring up countless debris like snow. It's just a fight and the losses are so huge. Do you really feel no pain at all? Jiangxia understood clearly in his heart. He glanced at Qin Pingan's real body in front of him, and then turned to look at the existence high up as a blindfold. Yes, that's how divinity makes the decision. If there is no intention, there is no mistake. The 2 Qin Pingan exchanged positions. The Qin Pingan in front of Jiangxia had removed the blindness, and he was the truly divine half. 4 fairy swords appeared around him. This Qin Pingan shook his neck, raised his hand and shook his sleeves. His golden eyes looked fiery. He grinned and said, "Jiangxia, that I don't do things well. To be honest, I've tolerated you for a long time." Jiangxia smiled and said, "Same reason. Qin Pingan has always been good at stealing from his masters. For example, during his retreat at the Qingping sword sect's Mi Xiefeng and Changchun Dongtian dojo, he also imitated Wu Shuangjiang and imitated 4 fairy swords. If we say that Wu Shuangjiang's 4 pieces are second-class authentic works, they are similar to the official imitations of official porcelain, which are deposited with money. So after the Battle of the Night Ship, Qin Pingan's imitation sword was once again first class. Whether it was the material of the sword or the divine will, it was that civilian imitation official. It is naturally not difficult to scare people on the mountain, and it is also effective in fighting people in the same situation. However, if you use these imitation fairy swords to deal with Jiangxia, it is inevitable that you will feel that your skills are at a loss, or that you are jumping over the wall. Jiangxia could tell the quality of those poor imitation swords just by looking at them. It seems that it is really not far away from using several techniques to suppress the bottom of the box. This kid is good at picking opponents, and he directly chose by Yujing Yudo as the target of his sword challenge. Being truly invincible is not considered arrogant in today's world. It is estimated that when Yudo has completely refined a Yujing mountain, it will be time for him to reach the pseudo 15th level. However, if you want to become the number one person in the world, you have to overcome your own calamities. Xianxia is like this and so is Yudo. Thinking about it, great chaos has begun in King Ming's world. From a peaceful and prosperous era to a chaotic era, how to transform into peace is the fate of Yudo. Looking at the young man in front of him who has used all his tricks, there is no hint of discouragement in his eyes. After all, Qin Pinggan's method should have been used to deal with Yudo. A pot of wine in the pavilion, what does it mean? It was hard for Jiangxi not to remember the group of scholars in ancient times who were high-spirited, impassioned, not pedantic in temperament, and always kept their grudges clear. Jiangxi picked up the spear, pointed it at the high place and asked lazily, whether it is a sword holder or half a sword, can you show some real skills that are not fancy? Easy to say. Qin Pinggan, the real body in the high place, stamped his feet, instantly shattering hundreds of chi talismans on his hands and feet, and said with a smile, if you want to take over the universe with your spirit, you need to break it into chaos first. Jiangxi nodded and said, young man, how dare you think about it? The next moment, Jiangxi was knocked to the ground by Qin Pinggan's hand, holding down his head. Sword of Coming Chapter 1147. The two figures merged into one, and it seemed that for the first time Qin Pinggan allowed his divinity to take over the magpie's nest, allowing his pure divinity to control my life without any blinders. Jiangxi's eyes flashed, the sky changed? The sky color of this battlefield ruins also shows a trend of changing from the green seedlings in spring to the golden rice grains during autumn harvest, with green and yellow just joining each other. He knocked Jiangxi to the ground with one hand, and then kicked the burly body out laterally. Jiangxi almost broke the formation with a long spear, pointed the tip of the spear to the ground, turned around 100 feet away, stood still, and stabbed the neck of Qin Pinggan, who was close by. Qin Pinggan turned his head to the side, avoiding the tip of the spear, stretched out his hand to grasp the spear, spread his palms, pressed his 5 fingers to Jiangxi's chest, his palms were filled with thunder, and said with a smile, let's go. In an instant the heaven and earth sounded like the knocking sound of Hongzhong Dalu, his hands were like hammers and his big buckles made a loud sound. Jiangxi fell back with a bang, his figure was like a kite with broken strings, and his whole face was shaking due to the flood of fists. After a while, the hairpin on the top of his head was broken and his hair was disheveled. Jiangxi stood barefoot 1,000 feet away with a gun in his hand. He had to nail the bottom of the formation into the ground to stop his retreat. The 4 immortal swords drew 4 sharp trajectories in the air, following each other like shadows. Jiangxi used his spear to fly 2 of them away. Unlike the previous great refining objects that were shattered at the touch of a broken formation, the 2 imitation immortal swords either flew around or were raised high. After all, if it didn't break on the spot, Jiangxi used a single fist to split open the fairy sword that was nailed to the center of his eyebrows. In a hurry, there was still a fairy sword that contained the true meaning of Taoism, and it passed through Jiangxi's ribs and was frowned slightly. Jiangxi reached out and grasped the hilt of the sword. The momentum of the long sword was blocked. The tip of the sword vibrated slightly and buzzed. Jiangxi could not easily crush it. There was a slight accident. Just as Jiangxi was about to increase the force on his palm, he saw a pair of pure golden eyes came into view. The next moment, the man's forehead was pressed with 5 fingers like hooks. His wrist was twisted and Jiangxi was thrown out of the formation together with him. Qin Pinggan bent down slightly, waved his sleeves, and a fire dragon with a body as thick as the mouth of a well hit Jiangxi's back in the air. Jiangxi swayed and thrust a spear toward the sky curtain, just in time to hit a water transport captain that fell from the sky out of thin air. The halberd was broken. The fairy sword in Jiangxi's hand was able to get out of the trap. Qin Pinggan put his fingers together and made sword secrets at will. He controlled the 4 fairy swords to spin in the air, waiting for the opportunity to move. A pair of golden eyes shone brightly, and in the field of vision, there was no longer Jiangxi's skin and bones, but a picture of the flow of true energy in the human body, heaven and earth of the ancestor of the military strategist. It was so majestic. Unexpectedly, I couldn't find any loopholes. Jiangxi had just smashed the halberd, and there was a majestic mountain with rows of palaces and pavilions next to him. It was like a real person's palace in ancient times. Throw it over so fiercely. Like a naughty child with weak physical strength, he throws a seal with all his strength. Jiangxi pressed his spear against the mountain seal. His suspended body was as small as a mustard seed. The muscles of one arm were tangled, his sleeves were bulging, veins popped out on the back of his hand, and sparks were flying from the tip of the spear. Withstanding the huge momentum of the mountain, the tip of the spear did not penetrate the mountain, but golden lights swam wildly like snakes, spreading rapidly at the bottom of the xuanhuan character seal, and when countless golden lights flowed backwards like streams, spreading across the mountainside to the top, the dazzling golden thread has wrapped around the entire mountain. As soon as Jiangxi withdrew his spear, the mountain collapsed and dust filled the sky. From the time he drew the spear to the time he retracted the formation, it only took a blink of an eye. Chen Pingan didn't give Jiangxi a chance to change his breath of pure energy, so he stepped closer and exchanged punches in a straightforward manner. Jiangxi was punched into the sky. His wrist shook violently, and the spear rotated like thunder, shattering the lingering sword intent hidden in the fist. Chen Pingan fell straight into the ground. On the way down, he did not forget to flip his sleeves, and countless fire-carrying and water-carrying snakes shot towards the sky like flying swords. Jiangxi's palm slid across the broken formation and grasped the middle of the gun. It turned out that two mountains were closing together like cliffs flattened by a sword, trying to suppress Jiangxi. The attack was menacing, just like an ancient giant spirit raising its arms and clasping its palms, trying to crush the gun-wielding warrior who was as small as an ant. Jiangxi forcibly swallowed a mouthful of blood, and when it was stimulated by the warrior's true energy in his body, it was like a burning fire cooking oil, and the mist evaporated. All the blood turned into the material of the Great Road, and was melted with the warrior's true energy. With a slight turn of his wrist, the formation-breaking spear rolled, and two strong winds swirled from the tip of the spear, stirring the two palm cliffs into a cloud of dust, and gravel fell to the ground like rain. Jiangxi raised his hand and hovered in the air, looking down at Chen Pingan who was standing in the pit. There are 5 martial arts in Jiangxi's body that are fighting for the second and third. A previous hot hand with Chen Pingan still failed to completely suppress it, which caused Jiangxi to suffer a lot. In the past, everyone kept their own hands and naturally each got what he needed. Chen Pingan needed to use Jiangxi's hand to forcibly dismantle a series of natal objects with external forces, and beat them into chaos. Jiangxi also had to refine the 3 rebel martial arts that tried to make waves in the small world of the human body. The martial arts wrapped up the aura of heaven and earth, or formed an army and confronted Jiangxi's martial arts from the Qingming world. Dantian battlefield, they formed formations against each other or dispersed like light cavalry, turning into a stream of bandits, attacking the Bodis meridians and post roads everywhere, or like an army pretending to surrender and seizing the city, rising up and entrenching themselves in a key natal acupoint of Jiangxi. A large banner stands on the top of the majestic city. Jiangxi's body is full of stagnant energy and blood, which affects his soul. How can he be like an arm? Chen Pingan's hair was swaying at the temples, he smiled with squinted eyes and stretched out his hand, condensing the pure killing energy between heaven and earth, and manifested a white greenwood spear, which is the most common in the martial arts field. Holding the spear in hand, Chen Pingan tiptoed, and the ground at the bottom of the pit shook. His figure flashed away, and like a turtle on its back, he shot out circles of fist ripples, leaving the earth devastated. It seems that Chen Pingan has made up his mind to ask Jiangxi what he is best at and compete with him. First it was boxing skills, then military magic, and now spear skills. Putting distance between Jiangxi and the imitation swords hanging in the 4 directions of the world, the respective swords flashed, and the blue sky road turned into soft mud, and the 4 fairy swords disappeared in an instant. While Jiangxi was distractedly exploring the signs of those difficult imitation swords, he was waiting for Chen Pingan to approach. The melee fight was like meeting in a narrow alley, the brave one wins. This time the opening scene is a master of the 5 elements technique, gathering soil to form a mountain, using his mind to control the mountains, floating in the high sky, facing Jiangxi, and the mountains fall like rain. Jiangxi shattered hundreds of mountains, the sound was like rolling thunder, and the number of mountains that took root on the ground was even greater, with a line winding like a dragon's veins on the earth. Between the sky and the earth, there are still mountains shaped like a formation of wild geese, falling suddenly one after another. Jiangxi was annoyed. Logically speaking, Chen Pingan had already squandered all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth accumulated in the cave in his body before practicing. Where did he get so much new spiritual energy of heaven and earth? What kind of magical power was created out of nothing? This time in the Shuti Mountains and rivers, Chen Pingan moved around, using the dragon vein peaks as steps to climb up step by step. He stepped on the top of each mountain. Every time his steps connected, his figure grew a little bit bigger. When he was approaching Jiangxi, he was already as huge as a mountain god. Seeing that Qin Pingan, who was relying on the power of mountains and rivers, was not an empty frame made of paper, Jiangxi also swayed his shoulders in the air, revealing a golden body with a dense treasure appearance. Qin Pingan, or go straight to use one of them. Or the steps are shrinking, and the spear is like a dragon's veins. Finally, the tip of the spear exhaled like a flying sword and struck his hand tendons, tearing off a piece of flesh and blood from Jiangxi's arm. However, he was hit by Jiangxi with a shot and interrupted at the waist. His body turned into dozens of sword lights and recovered elsewhere. Jiangxi shot him straight to the head with another shot. Although Qin Pingan avoided it again, the air around him was. But a dark ravine of time suddenly opened up. Both sides have their own dealings and no one dares to take it hard. The trajectory of each shot contains the endless aftertaste of the fist, and is dazzling like arcs cutting the blue sky wantonly crisscrossing, and the Taoism will last forever. Jiangxi's spear skills were specially created for fighting in battle formations. He opened and closed the formation and took the head of the general directly. On the other hand, Qin Pingan is just like the martial arts warrior who is a wanderer in the world. His moves are exquisite and have many names, but he loses a bit of his powerful Taoism that can be used like a god. Qin Pingan twisted his body without turning his head. He suddenly turned his wrist with great force and quickly thrust his gun backwards. A shot hit Jiang Shifaxiang's heart, which was about to freeze his heart completely, and then destroyed the surrounding caves near his heart orifice, so as to cooperate with the three martial arts inside and outside. However, Jiangxi shot him in the neck earlier, lifting Qin Pingan high in the air. Two fairy swords pierced Jiangxi's hands at the same time, and the other two were driven straight into Jiangxi's insteps. Ignoring those fairy swords, Jiangxi raised his head slightly and sneered, "What's the point?" After removing the magic power of Fatianxiangdi, Qin Pingan held the gun in his left hand and wiped his neck with his right hand. His palm was covered with hot golden blood. Jiangxi put away the Dharma picture in unison, and his heart was dripping with blood. However, this injury looked seeping, but in fact it was negligible. The wooden gun in Qin Pingan's hand turned into a puff of dust and flew away in the wind. Jiangxi slowly retracted his spear to break the formation, and pulled out an embroidery needle-like imitation sword from his temple. Put his fingers against the tip of the sword and the hilt, crushing it little by little. Fortunately for Qin Pingan, it was just another piece of great wealth in the midst of chaos. Jiangxi said, "I know you haven't exerted your full strength yet, and are still deliberately weighing down your body with complicated thoughts. If you just want to delay time and wait for help, I can wait here and chat with you for a few words. It doesn't matter. But if you want to have a good fight, don't hide it, it's better to weigh each other's weight." Qin Pingan shook his head and said, "I didn't mean to have distracting thoughts, I just really couldn't control them." How difficult it is for Qin Pingan, who appears in a purely divine manner, to find out how difficult it is for Qin Pingan to deal with. The group of earthly branch monks in Dali capital must have the most say. Carefully selected by his senior brother Cui Chan, the imperial court provided him with natural materials and earthly treasures at all costs, and arranged for guidance from masters. The most qualified and successful Taoist monk in the continent just had a fight with Qin Pingan, who took the opportunity to slip out of the prison. As a result, many monks have inner demons, which is proof. If it hadn't been afraid of Li Sheng at that time, Qin Pingan himself might not have been able to conquer him. Jiangxi smiled and said, "Xuanhuan is not as good as Cui Chen Duo. He is just a poor student with no talent and can only rely on hard work. Now his appearance is somewhat similar to that of Wuzhou." Qin Pingan raised his eyebrows. Jiangxi nodded and said, "Why, are you worried that Wuzhou and I have already conspired to share the spoils with you? This kind of thing is really uncertain." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "If you ask for it, just come. Rather than worrying about a thief for 1,000 days, it is better to kill the thief immediately." The purpose of refining the magic weapon and winning by quantity is to consolidate the foundation of the Tao, to lay the foundation of the immortal realm extremely solid, and strive to one day be able to open up all the more than 1,000 caves in the human body, so as to prepare for the enlightenment and ascension. Just waiting for private teaching. Taoist Ding's ascension method has been verified and confirmed to be feasible. Cannot be said that Qin Pingan's breakthrough is only an instant to the outside world. Relying solely on self-deceptive forgetting, and sealing off all past memories to build a cage, relying on long walls of words to create chasms and passes to imprison divinity, are ultimately the inferior methods of water control through blockage. Therefore, every natal object of the great refining is an additional shackle for divinity. In retreat at Fiola Dojo, Qin Pingan's idea was to wait until he reached the Ascension Realm before seeking a cure. What to do when the time comes for the Ascension Realm? The purpose is clear, it is just three things: find the missing pieces of the natal porcelain, and reassemble the complete celadone paperweight. Have a refreshing discussion with your own divinity. At that time, when the soul is not hindered and the Tao mind is not hindered, you can have no worries and can rest assured to try to find a great road, try to combine it, and become the 14th realm. The real body of Qin Pingan is more and more different from the divine Qin Pingan, who is responsible for building a small world, compiling a juvenile book for Taoist Ding and protecting Taoism. The bigger it is, the more difficult it is for the two parties to reconcile. At least in the immortal realm, Qin Pingan has no chance of winning. But Xianxia came to visit and started this great battle, which was indeed unexpected. What was supposed to be a great skill, in order to overcome the large number of divine creatures, turned out to be a burden. Therefore, Qin Pingan had almost no hesitation and made a decisive decision. He did the opposite and used Xianxia to smash the natal objects and turn them into chaos. Then he used this phenomenon of, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked, and the mountains and rivers collapsed, in the human world. Qin Pingan, it is necessary to separate many minds, like a scout on the battlefield, to follow the clues to find those two chi palaces that have the opportunity to be connected like a paradise in the cave. Once found, they will be recorded so that they can carve out the chaos and refine the chi to separate the pure. A turbulent move that created the world. When confronting Xianxia, you have to be distracted and feed war with war. It's like practicing Taoism while wandering away from home. It's extremely dangerous. The hardships here are not enough for outsiders. Forced by the situation facing Xianxia, the ancestor of the military strategist whose killing power far exceeded expectations, there would be no way to fight him otherwise. After Xianxia smashed a series of natal objects, Qin Pingan took the initiative to smash those chi talismans that were used to forcibly suppress the realm and limit the Taoism, allowing the divinity to be fully stretched, as if a forbidden mountain with monuments everywhere was completely lifted. Back to basics. It can be understood that to a certain extent, Qin Pingan's human nature has been holding him back, allowing his divinity, or his truly complete self and Taoist heart to drag his feet, and he has never been able to reach perfection. When it comes to boxing with Zijing Wufu or sword fighting with immortals, Qin Pingan can still rely on his many skills to cover up the past, but against Xianxia there are no flaws. I remember that I had a conversation with Gao Jun, the #1 person in the world in Lotus Root Blessed Land and the leader of the Hushan sect who was transferred from martial arts to seek immortality. Heaven will no longer be with you, but time will soon remain. If you can't do two things, things will be done at the right time. Aren't you afraid that the earthworm will still shake the tree, and the mantis arm will be used as a chariot? Xianxia didn't need to change a martial artist's pure jinqi, nor was he in a hurry to take action. He shook his head and said, "Sit in the summer palace, serve as the last hidden official, bear the true name of the demon clan, and join half of the Great Wall of Sword Qi." After returning to Haoran, Luapa Mountain accepted Xiaomo and Xiego, taking Ningji as their direct disciple, filling the gap in Tongya Island, digging Dadu, etc. You have to bear the consequences of long-term consequences, which will last for hundreds of years and thousands of years without stopping. Have you ever thought about these consequences? It's not that this ancestor of the military strategist was very patient. He was really stronger than Xianxia, and he didn't have the confidence to kill this group of soldiers quickly. It's not that Xianxia can't win in a fight, but that Qin Pingan, who presents a half-won pure godlike attitude, is really difficult to kill. Jiangxi's eyes were pitiful and he said with a sneer, "A series of accidents hinder your practice and prevent you from climbing high. Isn't it a solid example? You are young and your Taoist age is still young, so you will be disliked by the gods if you are careful." First, there was the assassination of a candidate ghost from the 14th realm, and then there were several sneak attacks by a real 14th realm person, and then Jiangxia used him as a stepping stone to ascend to heaven. 3 huge accidents in a row. As for the trouble caused by several demon monks from Qingyang and Tongyi's Haodadu, it is nothing compared to these. Qin Pingan remained silent. I was mentally prepared. There are no ups and downs, but it is difficult to feel at ease. Since there is destined to be a cause and effect that needs to be borne, if it doesn't fall on the shoulders of others elsewhere, then it's okay. It's a pity that Jiangxia quickly saw through the trick and refused to defeat, an imitation white jade capital with his own hands. Otherwise, there is a lot to learn from this fight, and it would not be considered a complete loss. I am afraid that apart from the three masters of the three religions and by Yujing, Jiangxi can be said to be the most qualified person to find out the flaws in Bai Yujing's avenue. Chen Pingping stabilized his mind and asked with doubts on his face, "Why don't you use a spear to break through the formation and break through the restrictions of this area of heaven and earth? Why don't you try it?" Jiangxi said calmly, "A lion is fighting a rabbit. Do you need to escape? Do you have a backup plan? What I'm waiting for is your backup plan." Chen Pinggan was silent for a moment, took a deep breath and said with a bright smile, "Jiangxi's words are really a first-rate punch. This is true invincibility. That's it, let's just fight again." Chen Pinggan had no more distracting thoughts, opened a boxing frame, looked forward and murmured to himself. Jiangxi hesitated for a moment, then used a magical power to put away his spear and break the formation. He laughed loudly and said, "Take this punch." On the battlefield, the bodies of both sides were as fast as thunder. Tens of thousands of flowing lights and shadows were everywhere. The world was filled with surging fists. Two pure martial artists struck a point that seemed to ban all magic and magical powers. A lawless place. The light of the sword is like a rainbow, cutting through the many taboos in this world. It turns out that Ning Yao came across the world wearing a golden robe and carrying the fairy sword, Zhen. She was the first to arrive at this ancient battlefield site. If the battlefield where Qin Pinggan and Jiangxi were located was the central boundary, Ning Yao Yufeng would stop at the north. In the Chongyang Temple in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, the ghost who was a candidate for the 14th realm threatened to eradicate a demon from the underworld in the underworld. He killed Qin Pinggan, a hidden official, and gained the recognition of the wild ghosts on the Xuanhuan road. Hoping to use this shortcut to accumulate considerable moral virtue, join the road in one fell swoop, and be the first to occupy the single-plank bridge of the Ghost Road. It used Xiao Pu, one of the female ghosts in Cherry Tsing Yi, as a bridge between yin and yang to secretly assassinate Qin Pinggan. Things happen suddenly and are impossible to prevent. Although it tried its best to attack and failed to succeed, it was a coincidence that Qin Pinggan accidentally hit it and used many methods originally used to guard against Wu Zhou's attack, but Qin Pinggan was still seriously injured regardless of the law. The damage to the robe only means that dozens of basic caves within the small world of the human body have been reduced to ruins. Of course, before Qin Pinggan could find trouble with it, Ning Yao traveled to Fengdu with his sword and killed it. The result of this sword quest, whose truth was only spread on the top of the mountain for the time being, also allowed Ning Yao to secure his position in the new 14th realm. The top spot among the strong 14. Ning Yao raised his eyes and looked into the distance with a stern expression, unable to tell what her true thoughts were at the moment. Wu Shuangjiang followed closely behind. His figure was located in the east, and he displayed his dharma as soon as he appeared on the stage, making no secret of his cultivation as a monk in the 14th realm. This majestic statue of Dharma, almost standing tall on the sky and the earth, is holding a stack of large talismans blue sky created by him. As soon as he appeared, Wu Shuangjiang began to use the talismans. Every time the statue moved, the earth would shake, and he raised his hand to repair the sky. The ripples formed a sky barrier that looked like green glass. Jiangxi couldn't be allowed to escape with just a few punches. Only you, Jiangxi, can't reach the green avenue of the sky. Wu Shuangjiang teamed up with the Taoist priest Gao Gu, the monk Jiang Xiu, and the female sword fairy Baolin to fight against Bai Yujing, and ended in a disastrous defeat. Yu Dou held the fairy sword and sat in Bai Yujing, facing 3 14th realm monks and a peak ascension realm swordsman on his own. This battle established Yu Dou's reputation as the first person among the founders of the three religions to be truly invincible. Although Bai Yujing, whom Yu Dou relies on, is tantamount to sacrificing the most precious treasure of Taoism in the world, it is the key and indispensable. After all, the sages of the world don't say anything about this kind of thing, and the temples of hundreds of thousands of mountains don't care about it. It's whoever says it is. Really invincible is just a nickname given by others. Yu Dou didn't bother to say anything more about whether he was really invincible or not. The three of them, including Gao Gu, died and died completely. Only Wu Shuangjiang quietly returned to the 14th realm with his unique method of combining Tao. After a trip to Luolu Mountain, I came here for my appointment. In fact, strictly speaking, that unprecedented and magnificent interrogation was the result of the death of all 4 people, and no one survived. It is only said that Wu Shuangjiang's 4 imitation, immortal swords, of immortal weapon rank have all fallen in rank. Two of them, Tai Bai and Jinjin, were downgraded to semi-immortal weapons, and the remaining two imitation swords, Daozong and Wanfa, it has become a magic weapon. From this we can see how brutal that battle was and how powerful Yudo was. Taoist priest Gao Gu wants revenge, monk Jiang Xiu has his own desires, and sword repairer Baolin has been seeking death for a long time. Wu Shuangjiang, who was born as a military strategist, wanted to usher in a world of troubled times, so as to increase his Taoist power and practice. One day he would be justified and his realm would reach a higher level. Since Yudo has been suffering in the world for a long time, let Yudo and Bai Yujing become Lao Huangli together. To the south, a middle-aged scribe in a blue shirt and a long coat with cloth shoes appeared side by side, and a handsome young man with a red mole on his eyebrows. The two were far apart. They each built a small heaven and earth, with mountains and rivers dependent on each other. They were the abbots of the formation and each acted as the host. Thanks to the fight with Wu Shuangjiang during the night ship battle, Cui Dongshan and Jiang Shangzhen, two famous boys with many treasures, exchanged their possessions and bartered for 20 or 30 magic weapons to add to their respective formations. Fill in the gaps. In the west, Zheng Juzhong appeared last, his feet touching the ground. One person carries three completely different Tao Qi. Intentionally or unintentionally, they just formed an encirclement trapping Jiang Shi, the founder of the military strategist. Jiang Shangzhen looked at City Lord Zheng and was filled with wonder in his heart. Comparing people to each other is irritating. Is there really anyone who can achieve the feats of the 3/14th realms of Yinshin Yangshin? Cui Dongshan asked in his heart. Chief Shou, have you seen the doorway? Jiang Shangzhen said, Confucianism and Taoism are relatively clear, but the third Taoism is difficult to determine. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, who is the least likely to deal with the military strategist? Who is incompatible with each other? Jiang Shangzhen suddenly said, it turns out to be a farmhouse. No wonder Mr. Zheng has to keep his feet on the ground. Can it be understood that as soon as Mr. Zheng arrived, he started a direct dispute with Jiang Shi? As expected of Zheng Juzhong of Baidi City, he never used harsh words when fighting with others. He was more like a stupid young man fighting in the street. He just met each other and rushed towards him with a knife. He stabbed first as a sign of respect. Cui Dongshan looked around, checking the amount of spiritual energy from heaven and earth, and said, Hee, Chief Shou, you are very good. You answered 2 of the 3 questions wrong based on your ability. If I didn't remind you, you wouldn't have got them all wrong. Confucianism pursues Qi Jiping. It stands to reason that they definitely don't like fighting. After all, when the world is in chaos, there is no way to educate them. But if you read a few more history books, it will be clear that there are 2 types of people who like to talk about war lightly. One is an emperor who loves great achievements, and the other is a civil servant who has never been on the battlefield and has never been knifed. Generals who have led troops and killed people have to be more cautious. Taoism advocates governing by doing nothing, which is very difficult to deal with on the surface. But life and death are the laws of nature. Of course, if you don't deal with it, you won't deal with it, but it's not that difficult to deal with. Jiangxi has been trapped for 10,000 years, and the war is unpredictable. When the ancestor of the military strategist comes back, his path will also be different. Then it changed a little. If Zheng Juzhong moved out of Confucianism and Taoism, he would have no problem dealing with ordinary military giants, but it would be almost impossible to deal with Jiangxi. Cui Dongshan said, the 3 Zhengs are in the middle, namely the Buddhist family, the farmer family, and the medical family. Let alone today there are 1 religious family and 2 families. Even in 10,000 years, they will still not like the military family. Jiang Shangzhen was shocked and said, Mr. Zheng also studied Buddhism? Cui Dongshan nodded like garlic and said with a smile, Zheng Juzhong has been studying Buddhism in the wilderness. Chief Zhou's question is superfluous. You have been in the mountains with Patriarch Jingqing for a long time. Are you confused? Zheng Juzhong's behavior has always been unreasonable. For example, he was in the 14th realm of Hadao in the wild world, and he intercepted a huge portion of the wild destiny, but he was still able to deceive the secrets of heaven, and was never caught by the great ancestor of Tuiyue Mountain and Wenhai Zhomi. During this period, Zheng Juzhong had been hiding in Jingquqing, which was a sect of the Yiluo sect. Eventually he and the city were moved to Haoran Tianxia by Zheng Juzhong. He was given the surname of Zheng by the immortal realm female cultivator Qingjia named Xuanhu. Later, the entire Jinsui city was allocated by Zheng Juzhong to the Fuyao sect of his disciple Gu Kan. There was a Yuebei pavilion in the city. Zheng Qingjia made it a forbidden area, and even the sect leader Gu Kan was not allowed to set foot in it. Gu Kan naturally wouldn't care about such trivial matters. Note, Chapter 956, Someone Beats the Drum. Cui Dongshan guessed that only Zheng Juzhong came now. As for the other two, they should also be the Taoist bodies of one master and two assistants. Taoism. Supplemented by the five elements yin and yang family, and then combined with the miscellaneous family that claims to combine Confucianism, Moism and Dharma, and integrate the principles of hundreds of schools of thought? Military commander. The legalists will be the auxiliaries and the strategists will be the second ones? Jiang Shangzhen looked at the battlefield and couldn't tell who was who. He was so frightened that he saw the mountain master being beaten as soon as he entered. Fortunately, he fought back and forth with the ancestor of the military strategist. Such a record is already shocking enough. No one dared to believe it when it was spread. Cui Dongshan said with a solemn expression, "This is because Jiangxi hasn't really acted yet." Not really, it's because he hasn't used the peak cultivation level of the first ancestor of the military strategist to show his real trump card. I guess he is waiting for us to take the bait. He doesn't see us. Show them all and he will remain hidden. Jiang Shangzhen nodded. We want to work together to stifle him and divide the spoils. This ancestor of the military strategist doesn't want to complete his achievements in one battle. Cui Dongshan threw down his sleeves and laughed loudly. Don't be afraid, Mr. Zheng is here. It's not our turn to think about things, it's unfounded worries. Jiang Shangzhen paid close attention to the battlefield, with a complicated look on his face and sighed in his heart. Would he fight with a guy like Jiangxi who was among the top 10 in the world 10,000 years ago? Things that are unthinkable. If someone had advised him to do this 100 years earlier, Jiang Shang would have ripped off his head and used it as a urinal. Compared to the sword fighting scene on the night boat where they didn't know each other before they met, there were just more Jiangxi and Zheng Juzhong today, and they were mostly acquaintances. Wu Shuangjiang, Ning Yao and the pair of living treasures smiled and nodded in greeting. Before he actually took action, Wu Shuangjiang began to discuss the ownership of Jiangxi's 5 military fortunes, saying, Mr. Zheng is responsible for collecting 3 martial fortunes. This is the interest that he and xuanhuan have agreed on long ago. The 3 military fortunes of a first military strategist are actually just interest? It is impossible to imagine what the principle and profit of the transaction between Zheng Juzhong and xuanhuan were. The gentleman couldn't be distracted and could not speak. Cui Dongshan nodded and agreed, no problem. Wu Shuangjiang continued, of course the 2 shares that Jiangxi retrieved from Qingming Tianxia belong to me. As a bonus from this deal, the dragon-slaying platform of the Sui Chu Palace and all the gold and fine copper coins in the inventory belong to Qin Pingan. But he needs to get it by himself. If he goes too late, how much can he keep? Swishigang does not make any guarantee. Jiang Shangzhen looked strange and murmured, if we cut it off and just look at this scene, wouldn't we look too much like villains? Cui Dongshan gently shook the folding fan with a relaxed attitude. He didn't care about Chief Zhou's words, but he was actually calculating in his head. He asked, Palace Master Wu is in such a hurry when he goes out that he doesn't even have time to put in a few gold and copper coins? Wu Shuangjiang said, you have to come empty-handed. Bai Yujing is keeping a close eye on him now and it's easy to make excuses. Just saying that he was out traveling to relax and he ran into Jiangxi. They met on a narrow road, each refused to give way, and they started fighting at the slightest disagreement. It makes sense. Even so. Bai Yujing didn't understand so he had to hold his nose and admit it. But if Luopishan had real stolen goods, it would be difficult for the Confucian temple to explain it to Bai Yujing. Throw it over and no one can catch it. Cui Dongshan nodded and said, understood. There are some things that can be done but not said, and there are some things that can only be said but not done. Wu Shuangjiang glanced at the ancestor of the military strategist, then looked at Zheng Juzhong and sighed, why does it feel like the battle at Xianxia Temple? At the site of the ancient battlefield of Qingming Tianxia, a Taoist priest attained Taoism not long ago and took a path of perfect merit and virtue, reaching the 14th realm. Jiang Shang was really at a loss. Zheng Juzhong turned a deaf ear. Cui Dongshan had to explain a few words to Chief Zhou. It was probably an internal strife. The 2 armies were fighting. Every soldier was an elite. Their vitality was severely damaged and the dynasty's power declined. Cui Dongshan had a good time, and in the ancient days dojo that was full of wild atmosphere, he exhaled a mouthful of snow-white mist, like a white snake swimming around, twisting and twisting itself like a rope. At the same time, Cui Dongshan carefully took out a scroll from his sleeve and held it in his hand, but he was not in a hurry to open this treasure of Luoluo Mountain, a relic of the Sword Chi Great Wall. Chatting back to chatting, Jiang Xianxia also had his hands full. He sat cross-legged on a futon in the willow shade, which was refined from ancient ruins. He opened his mouth and spat out, and a mouthful of golden sword pills that had just been refined appeared in the world. Bai Yi during the battle in Fuyazu, Yu Dou guarding Bai Yujing and Jiangxi at this moment. 3 shocking sieges, 2 revealed and 1 hidden. The first 2 games directly affected the world trend. I don't know what kind of profound impact this scene will have on the human world. If Jiangxi wants to return to the top and restore the cultivation of his first ancestor as a military strategist, will he have to bear the fate of being killed in the second round? The first 15 realms in the New World, even the pseudo-15 realms, will have to bear a huge disaster. As for the second one, it's much easier. When it comes to the Ascension realm and the 14th realm of Taoism, we are scrambling to be the first, one step at a time and each step at a slow pace. But if the old 14ers go further up, it will be a different situation. Jiang Xianxia was in high spirits and said to himself, "It's such an honor to meet at the right time. If we don't die in this battle, Jiang's life will be considered worthwhile." Cui Dongshan glanced at Zheng Juzhong, who always looked indifferent, and said with a smile, "I will set up a stall and tell stories on the bridge myself later." Zheng Juzhong from the Haoran world, Wu Shuangjiang from the Qingming world, and Ning Yao from the colorful world. These are the 3 monks of the 14th realm. Freeing up his hands a little, he punched Qin Pingan deep into the ground. Jiangxi still looked calm and asked, "When did you 2 get together?" Bai Yujing's gang of fortune tellers are indeed vegetarians. It's just that he didn't turn Luo Shan upside down, or is he just such an afterthought? Zhou Zi was really able to keep his composure. He didn't mention it at all when they met at the ancient battlefield of Zhulu County in Qingming World. It's easy to ask the question that Jiang Xianxia wanted to ask the most. It would be better to replace the hookup with an alliance. Jiang Xianxia is also very curious about this matter. The mountain owner never said hello to him. At the ferry crossing of Panshui County, Zhongtu Confucian Temple, Mr. Zheng and his mountain owner were traveling together. This matter was known to the world. Cui Dongshan frowned slightly and subconsciously rubbed the red mole on his forehead. After thinking about it, he felt a little relieved. In any case, with the help of Zheng Juzhong and Wu Shuangjiang, he had a better chance of winning. Zheng Juzhong went to Luolu Mountain. The old scholar and Cui Dongshan were both on the mountain at that time. But during that meeting, Zheng Juzhong didn't talk much about business, at least not about his military affiliation. As for Zheng Juzhong's pursuit of military strategists, since he asked Han Xiaosa to return to Baidi City to read more military books, and she also seriously bought military books from Qin Pingan, Cui Dongshan had noticed that Zheng Juzhong might have ideas about military strategists, but Cui Dongshan still, "I really can't believe that Zheng Juzhong would be so straightforward and want to kill Jiangxi directly. Fulong turned into a rebel? It's no different from the ordinary master's complicated thoughts, whose ups and downs are uncertain. The movement of the great monk's mind is often directly involved in the numerological changes of the time and place. The sect's energy, the power of the dynasty, and even the destiny of a continent will all follow. A certain determination of a truly enlightened person. This matter is similar to the bad appearance of the common people affects the whole body. I don't know who said a description. When a great monk has a Taoist heart, the world will respond in kind. Jiang Xianxia was still confused at this moment, why his mountain master fought with Jiangxi to death. It didn't delay Chief Zhou's decision to draw his sword. After this battle, how can Xiaoma still compete with himself for the top spot? On the battlefield in the center of the world, every time the 2 blurry figures of Shanju Qin and Jiangxi collided, they would stir up endless fists in the surrounding area, causing the whole world to shake. When Jiang Xianxia was in the small world of the dojo, he felt his eardrums vibrating and feeling stuffy. He couldn't help but ask from his heart, "Brother Cui, can I do it? Why do I feel like I have to make up the numbers? I feel that throwing a warrior or an Ascension Realm monk into that battlefield would not be enough." "Don't be a disservice," Cui Dongshan said angrily, "don't doubt it. If the new flying sword doesn't help, and the old temple master intends to make fun of you, you will just make up for it." Jiang Xianxia choked on his words and felt a little guilty. "What about you?" Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "I can spit at Jiangxi's mouth and confuse his mind with words." Jiang Xianxia wanted to echo a few words, but when he saw Cui Dongshan joking, his expression was extremely solemn. It was rare to see Cui Dongshan described like this, so Jiang Xianxia began to close his eyes and rest. Today's Zheng Juzhong is really weird. Cui Dongshan always felt that something was wrong. He seemed to suddenly think of an important matter and said to himself, Did you think wrong? This guy also wants to build a river to gather many tributaries and reorganize the tradition. New Dadu? Almost all schools of thought have one or two respected ancestors who have a lasting and profound influence on their own orthodoxy, such as Mr. Fan of the Merchants. In the Yin and Yang family, there are Lu family and Zhou Zi from Zhongtu, each occupying half of the country, and the two sides are facing each other for tat. In addition, farmers, pharmacists, etc. can also coexist harmoniously. Even though Confucianism, Buddhism and Taoism are collectively referred to as the three religions in one family, and can be individually selected from hundreds of schools of thought, the ancestral Tingxi County of China and the Qianxia martial temple worship Jiang Taigong as the chief priest, with 72 strategists from all dynasties. Famous generals serve as worshippers and share the incense of martial arts in the world. Only legalism is a special case. There has never been a legitimate patriarch, which makes legalism more like a loose school. There have been masters from generation to generation, but in history, there are only a handful of legalists who have been able to die well. This has also kept legalism in an embarrassing situation where reality and name are inconsistent. When it is in power, it is extremely powerful and has more worldly authority than any other prominent school. However, it is often short-lived, changes day by day and cannot last long. Furthermore, the legalist internal orthodoxy has never been unified, just as rivers often change their courses, encroaching on tributaries, and the main river channel and tributaries are confused. For example, Wei Liang, the governor of the Xuanhuan kingdom in Aquarius continent, was a famous legalist who was highly relied upon by Cui Han. He once helped the old build a monument on the top of Yizhou mountain. If asked about Wei Liang's family law, I believe it would be difficult for Wei Liang to say that he specifically learned from a certain lineage of legalism. Cui Dongshan looked solemn and temporarily suppressed his doubts. Fortunately, Zheng Zhuzhong was in his own camp, otherwise he would have had a headache. Wu Shuangjiang, Dharma Prime Minister, filled up the gaps in the great Tao of heaven and earth one by one, so that Jiangxi would not get away casually. With his true form standing on the shoulders of the Dharma Prime Minister, Wu Shuangjiang looked down at the battlefield in the distance, and in his hand appeared an ancient rusty weapon made of bronze, a horizontal blade. Wu Shuangjiang stared at the ancestor of the military strategist. Those who are strong will not die, and those who are eager to win will meet their enemies. The old road is blocked and it is time to change the flag. Not to mention Jiangxi, who was in the game, even Jiang Shangzhen, a bystander who was temporarily watching from the sidelines, felt that Wu Shuangjiang's words were full of murderous intent. It made him feel chilly down his spine. Let's not talk about Zheng Zhuzhong. Wu Shuangjiang was once a famous general enshrined in the martial arts temple. He and Jiangxi were both military strategists. Of course, they were half of their own people. They were nothing more than the upper and middle reaches of the history of this military lineage. Therefore, no matter how far-reaching the impact of this battle is on the general situation of the world, it only talks about the present moment. Regardless of how casual Wu Shuangjiang's words and expressions are, this battle is so desperate and full of murderous intent. Zheng Zhuzhong remained silent and just nodded towards Wu Shuangjiang, indicating that he could take action. I will know the truth and be responsible for dealing with Jiangxi's trump card in exchange for his life. Wu Shuangjiang understood. In today's battle we will kill Jiangxi, usurp his position, seize his name and gain the truth. The old and the new contend. Break into the house and have sex. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.